pretend it's in his head, it's in his head. He wishes he could fix what's in his head, what's in his head. He breaks his heart in every dream where they both kiss underneath the sheets. What a beautiful dream. When he plays pretend, it's in his head, it's in his head. He wishes he could fix what's in his head, what's in his head. He breaks his heart in every dream where they both kiss underneath the sheets. What a beautiful dream. And he plays pretend, it's in his head, it's in his head. He wishes he could fix what's in his head, what's in his head. He breaks his heart in every dream where they both kiss underneath the sheets. What a beautiful dream.
your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack, 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 Riverboat Jack. That's what I'm talking about. First time singing the songs from Riverboat Jack. Shout out. I don't know what I'm doing really, but I got passion. And that's what it's about. It's all about passion. Where she streams all that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack, 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 Riverboat Jack.
Hey everybody, how we doing? Hello Zarina Chess. Hello German Cow JJ. Hello Nuffsy for Life. Hello Zuni? Zuni. I'm gonna go with Zuni. Hello Forlorn79. You got a new BWA song that you made with AI. I mean, I'm happy to play it on stream, of course. Hello D503. Hello iJedi. Hello Psycho Salad 665. Hello Graham Carpenter. Hello OS Crane. Hello Salty Turtle Cupcake. Hello Trains and Bullshit. Hello Punky Gal. Hello Mr. Miyagi. Hello Dragonfly. Also OS Crane, I want to give you props. I saw your joke in chat and I liked it. It made me laugh. How can you support stream if you're a werewolf? Like and subscribe. It's good. I'm a sucker for wordplay. Hello Gamer G. Hello Nine-Tailed Witch. Hello. Hello Nindreen. How you doing? Hello Very Knifey Duck. Hey Mistress Lynn. So it doesn't help that tinnitus is driving me up a wall, so even if I wanted to sleep, I probably couldn't. I'm sorry to hear that. Hello. You're doing your first driving test on Monday? Well, best of luck. Hello, Mathathiahu. Hello, Paladin Lost. Howdy. Whew. How we all doing? I have had a very, very busy day of just like going from one thing to another, and it's suddenly 1 o'clock in the morning, and I haven't done my stream yet. So I decided I'm gonna do it anyway. Fuck it. I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. Fine. Let's go. Have liked and subscribed? Hell yeah. Also, you started to follow me on X. Well, I see the thirst trap strategy is working for me. All right, let's hear your your BWA song. Let's go. This is from Forlorn79, made with AI. Let's check it out. Again, not huge on AI, but as like fun, like one-off things for stream, I'm down.
Yo, homie, hearties, gather round the screen. When Riverboat Jack sails sails a pirate queen with a red mane glowing and a smile so bright. She leads us through the digital night. In the game of Scrabble, a word was denied, but from its ashes, a meme did rise. The WA, a battle cry in the chat, it roars, echoing laughter through all shores. BWA, booah, let's all shout. Raise your voices, no room for doubts. BWA, booah, loud and clear. With Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear.
Okay, Forlorn79, did you write these lyrics? Did you write these lyrics? Why do the AI sounds all sound like they were trained on a flogging Molly cover band? I'm not gonna lie, I like it. This is the best thing that I've seen created with AI. I am biased, but yeah.
Through the seas of pixels, she guides our way. With politics and games every single day. Her partner by her side, a bond so tight. Together they shine, a beacon of light. From Scrabble's lost to a meme so grand. The WA will
Hey,
take
my girlfriend
us
Ivy
there.
is going to start, so I couldn't have 88 in my name, so I've rebranded. I used to be Manic Jack Attack 88.
My girlfriend Ivy is going to start, I'm going to assume, streaming, so I couldn't have 88 in my name, so I rebranded. I used to be Manic Jack Attack 88. Yeah, getting rid of the 88 is probably an incredibly wise move, for both of you. Happy anniversary. Wait, whose anniversary is it? It was cool? I mean, I dislike AI, but I like it for fun memes.
In the chat, it's our rallying cry. With Jack at the helm, we reach for the sky. BWA, booah, let's all shout. Raise your voices, no room for doubts. BWA, booah.
Okay, but like, how did you get it? How did you get it to generate a song about BWA? That seems like it would be a lot of prompting for ChatGPT. I don't think ChatGPT knows me.
Loud and clear, with Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear. Join the crew, let's sail the stream. With Riverboat Jack, it's a pirate dream. BWA.
Wait, you made a fucking Blue Jean Farmer song? You guys made a meme out of that? Okay, well we gotta check that out too, I guess.
Forever will say, in her ship of laughter will always stay. BWA, let's all shout. Raise your voices, no room for doubts. BWA, loud and clear. With Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear. With Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear. BWA, let's all shout.
What the fuck was that?
Riverboat Jack. Forever will say, in her ship of laughter will always stay.
What's happening? What the fuck was that?
So join the crew, let's sail the stream. With Riverboat Jack, it's a pirate dream. BWA, forever will say, in her ship the laughter will always stay. Hey!
That was That was way more fun than it had any right to be. Like that was so, I even loved like the little weird like whisper segment in there. That was so weird. Oh god. That was great. Can you put that one up on your YouTube too? I could put it into like a little playlist we could play at special occasions. You know, for the memes. Cause I wanna compile like all of the weird little songs you guys make. You should get Ailstorm to make you a song. I would love to get Ailstorm to make me a song. Have I ever done any content / discussion about AI machine learning stuff? I have, in fact. I'm not a fan, frankly. I dislike it, and I think that it is doomed to failure. But I do think it's fine, relatively, for fun little goofs. I don't like it. In fact, I was gonna talk specifically about how I don't like the AI movie making trend. I don't like it at all. Also, yeah, we might get some like fucking weirdos in chat today. I did, I guess, antagonize Nazis by being too hot and making their pee-pees hard. So sorry about that. Ailstorm, I was at their first ever show and they were called Battleheart. That's so cool. Also, Battleheart is a badass name. All right, we do need to listen to the Blue Jean Farmer song. The song dedicated to the humble blue jean farmer. The salt of the earth. Okay? The salt of the earth blue jean farmer.
Life of blue jean farmer, sure. Mighty hard, so the same. One crop at a time. The Wranglers are perfection, it makes my ass look fine. I tell you it's riveting, hard as it may seem. The job fills my pockets up with pride. It can't be beat, so I salute you blue jean farmers and to the dim queen. I'm proud to live in America where I can live and dream. So I salute you blue jean farmers and to the denim queens. Proud to live in America where I can live and dream.
No AI on the lyrics. Amazing. You might not like it, but this is America. Okay, it seemed like it was gonna keep going, but it did not. Oh god, that was so fucking funny. So for those of you who are unaware, in this community, we do have a meme generated a few weeks ago, where I made a prolonged series of jokes that what brought down the Soviet Union was the American blue jean farmer, the humble American denim farmer, harvesting the blue jeans that brought down the powerful Soviet Union. And, I used various images of visiting Soviet premieres being awed by American supermarkets and rotund American farmers and we talked about how they grew to prodigious sizes off of their diet of blue jeans. I thought it was just a few days. Where are the days going? June has literally not existed for me. I thought June 1st was yesterday. It's the 15th now. My dad smuggled a 1/4 ton of blue jeans into the Soviet Union. Ah, yes, an ally of the humble American blue jean farmer. I've been doing instrumentals and writing lyrics, singing to them. AI art is best partnered with. It needs human help. I think that's true. I think AI can make powerful tools. I just don't think AI is like the creative element. Wait, you mean that they weren't the ones that cracked the Iron Curtain? No, it was the humble American blue jean farmer. Blue jean smuggling was a big business. I studied it in college, genuinely. We did a week on how smuggling economies led to the oligarchs. I mean, that's true. That's true. Okay, but real talk, can we talk about how awful this trailer for Monster Camp is? Like, as opposed to like what we just experienced, which was, I think, fun goofs created by the community based on in-jokes, right? As opposed to this, which makes me want to die inside.
When school is finally out, there is only one place a monster can play all summer long. A place where worries melt away. And that place is Monster Camp. But listen, little one, beware the tempting whispers of the night. For in the darkness, a tricky test awaits. Or should I say, a tricky treat.
Oh god, he's turning monsters into candy! Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like this. You know, as opposed to like fun meme in-jokes that are like curated by the community, like I'm fine with like AI stuff for like small scale like memes and jokey jokes. But frankly, I will say this. When it comes to like just pure like image memes, AI is very bad at those. I will take the shittiest Microsoft Paint visual meme over like an AI generated one any day. You don't like Shrimp Jesus? I don't like Shrimp Jesus. He is not my lord and crayfish. God. Anyway, I hope you understand the distinction that I make. But again, I just, as far as AI goes, this is 10 out of 10 for me, okay? This is 10 out of 10 right here.
With politics and games every single day. Her partner by his side, a bond so tight. Together they shine, a beacon of light. From Scrabble's lost to a meme so grand, the WA Boo-ah will take a stand.
I think that's fun. I think that's fun. And I know in my heart that that was curated and like edited and like there was a human being behind that. The shittiness of the memes is what gives it character. True. Goat Jesus is more threat. Yeah, the vibe of this is pretty bad. Though I would say Goat Jesus kind of looks he looks like he got an agenda. Let's see here. How we all doing, folks? There's only one true goat, and his name is Michael Jordan. True! But who is the one true throat goat? That's the real question. We may never know. True, Foxbat. True. The guy from the Obama Tucker thing. We already defined that. True! True. The guy who claimed to have deep-throated Obama. God. That was such a fucking weird interview. Alright. I'm gonna play some Elden Ring. Alright? Hey, Grackletooth. Mario Del Monaco. Have you heard his opera performances? No, I have not. Okay. I'm going to play Elden Ring. And as many of you may know, yeah, I've covered his debates in the past, and I quite like them. Alex O'Connor, who goes by Cosmic Skeptic on YouTube, recently participated in a debate against one of the most bad faith political actors of our time. And I don't talk about him much because, frankly, he's so bad faith that it's like not, like I find him not really worth engaging with because he basically just lies. Like everything that he says is just a lie. And that man is Dinesh D'Souza, the famed documentarian of such films as 1,000 Mules, the movie that popularized the idea that the 2016 election or the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. Yeah, like he's not really worth engaging with. Like this is a man who is so dumb that he couldn't do like that he had 2,000 Mules, sorry. That he actually got convicted of like campaign finance fraud because he donated like $10,000 or something to a conservative political campaign, like double the cap of what you're allowed to donate. And he got sent to prison for it and got pardoned by Donald Trump. Yes, but he was and is a convicted felon, just a pardoned one. And anyway, I have no idea how this could possibly be productive, but Alex O'Connor and Dinesh D'Souza had a 2-hour-long debate about whether or not the Bible is true. And I happen to know that there is going to be a segment in here where Dinesh D'Souza defends genocide because it was in the Bible. And yeah. Alex, it seems like a real cinnamon roll of a character. I like him a lot. And I do like that he has a consistent faith in like the goodness of people, despite all evidence to the contrary in many cases, which I think makes him a really good debater. I think assuming good faith in your debate opponent allows you to maybe bring out more of their bad faith arguments, like it lulls them into a sense of security. And if you're good at debating, which Alex is, that's actually a weakness for your debate opponent. Let's see here. Alex gives this man the metaphorical stone cold stunner. This is why I want to watch it. Like I'm just excited. Like this, to me, this is where like political blood sports went. Okay, it moved in a completely different direction than people calling each other like slurs in mid debate, or like talking about how like what another like you suck dick. No, you suck dick. Instead, it went in this direction, and I am actually a huge fan of like the debate style of Alex O'Connor. I think he has a level of composure that I probably would not be able to have in these circumstances. So let's check it out.
You don't think that's a contradiction?
No, it's not a contradiction at all, because the gospel writers are constantly
Contradicting each other?
No, even in the ancient world, divine revelation comes into a primitive, barbaric world which is full of a lot of really bad guys.
And God says, keep going.
No,
Keep it up. You're
God
doing
does not.
such a
God
good
does
job.
not. God does not say keep going.
The God that you believe in is acting like a tribal war god.
A Christian book has got to be understood in the way Christians understand it.
So just to ask a direct yes or no question, I'd appreciate a direct yes or no to this. The God that you believe in is the moral author of the universe. Morally justifiably commanded the slaughter of innocent children and women. Yes or no?
Yep.
Check,
I think
1,
he's
2.
got him.
We're just getting the
I think our boy Alex O'Connor. I think our boy got him. Okay.
YouTube live stream going, but thank you all for being here, nice and early.
God, OS Crane. I could do with one of those.
We're gonna get going on YouTube, and yeah, we're about 15 minutes away from starting, so rock and roll. Feel free to just relax.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go pee real quick. I'll be right back. Don't you guys go anywhere.
Yo, homie, hearties, gather round the screen. Where Riverboat Jack sails a pirate queen. With a red mane glowing and a smile so bright, she leads us through the digital night. In the game of Scrabble, a word was denied, but from its ashes a meme did rise. The WA, a battle cry in the chat, it roars, echoing laughter through all shores. The WA, ooh-ah, let's all shout. Raise your voices, no room for doubt. BWA, ooh-ah, loud and clear. With Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear. Through the seas of pixels, she guides our way. With politics and games her partner by her side, a bond so tight. Together they shine, a beacon of light. From Scrabble's lost to a meme so grand, the WA Boo-ah will take a stand. In the chat, it's our rallying cry. With Jack at the helm, we reach for the sky. BWA Boo-ah, let's all shout. Raise your voices, no room for doubt. BWA Boo-ah, loud and clear. With Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear. So join the crew, let's sail the stream. With Riverboat Jack, it's a pirate dream. BWA Boo-ah, forever will stay. In her ship of laughter will always stay. BWA Boo-ah, let's all shout. Raise your voices, no room for doubt. BWA Boo-ah, loud and clear. With Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear. With Riverboat Jack, there's nothing to fear. BWA Boo-ah, let's all shout. Riverboat Jack. Forever will say, in her ship of laughter will always stay. So join the crew, let's sail the stream. With Riverboat Jack, it's a pirate dream. BWA, Boo-ah, where we'll say, in her ship of laughter will always stay. Da, 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 da. Hey! In the heart of the stream where the currents flow, there's a red-haired captain with a radiant glow. Riverboat Jack with her eyes so bright navigates the waters, chasing dreams in the night. She talks of games and battles won, and fights for rights until they're won. With her partner by her side, they sail the waves they won't abide. Get in the riverboat, hear her laughter sway. With every yawn and booger, it's a playful day. She'll say daddy or oh mommy in her unique way. Riverboat Jack, lead the way. In the chat, the waves crash loud. As Jack speaks truth, she stands proud. Politics, socialism, her flag unfurled. In her world, all voices are heard. With arm curls and glasses on,
What happened?
she blows a kiss.
What do you mean what happened?
Her favorite tune she'll sing along, and in her laughter we all belong. Get in the riverboat, hear her laughter sway. With every yawn and booger, it's a playful day. She'll say daddy or oh mommy in her unique way. Riverboat Jack, lead the way.
Oh, what? I was gone. I had to get something. It's good, and I'm fine. And I'm ready to have a good time. I got a little snack, and I have a beverage, and now I hope you all did the same. And we're all about to have a good time with this debate. And I think it's gonna be fun AF. Thanks for hanging out with me, even though I'm a sleepy lady. Also, Zuni and Kevin, your friendship in YouTube chat is extraordinarily wholesome. I'm properly hydrated and have a few Oreos. Hell yeah, OS Crane. And I have this Monster Rehab. That's basically just lemonade and green tea, and it's delicious. Paladin, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if I had to guess just a random number for fun, that's totally unrelated. You know, just the random guess a number game. I'd say like 10. Anyway, let's have a good time, folks. This is the first time I've heard of this channel, Pangburn, but they have almost like 200k subscribers. It looks like they host a lot of debates. And that's pretty interesting. I think in general they're not. I mean, I think that this might be a place we can mine for content. Oh, OS Crane. It's not sugar-free. It actually has sugar in it, but it only has 25 calories. Lemonade and green tea both taste good without, like, a sugar additive. So, like, it's kind of like a sugar-free Monster, but it has the caffeine of a normal Monster. But it doesn't have the aftertaste of, like, you know, a diet soda, which is really what I've been fleeing from for, like, my life. Get the content mines! My random number is 15. Ooh, nice. And, folks, if you enjoy the stream, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and please consider dropping those subs and donos. You know what? Maybe at 10 subs, like if somebody drops 10 or like you guys hit 20 subs, we'll play the BWA song. Maybe that will be like a reward for like dropping subs. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. Anyway, let's go.
Hello, everyone. This is Don Prager.
Also, I'm gonna kill
He's up
Mo
here doing
tonight.
a little pre-show chat with me today.
Yep. Travis and I, we've been talking for a while now, haven't we? We met on Discord. What?
Well, you came
Why are they
in the
breathing so
StreamYard
heavily?
days. So Don was originally just someone who signed
Oh,
up.
OS
to
Crane, I know I'm
have
weak sauce.
engage in a digital Pangburn discussion, and then eventually moved his way up the ranks, and now he's
pretty much, yeah.
one of your co-host to our weekly show, the Pangburn Update. And what else do? You also help judge our Discord server, which is a huge job.
Yeah, on the Discord and on the update, we do the co-host show on the update, and we kind of talk about these topics. We go over it week by week, what's going on in the intellectual sphere, what people are talking about, and stuff like that. It's been fantastic.
If you guys want to join us, if you're ever looking for a place that you can go to online that you're going to get a good faith, helpful engagement with your ideas, and you like talking about different topics, like the topic tonight, is the Bible true? You can come into the Pangburn Discord server and find a conversation at any time throughout your day. If you work a night shift, or if you work somewhere where you're allowed to have, you know, a conversation happening in your ear and you're able to talk, a lot of people do that on our Discord server.
Yo, that
and
sounds
it's
great,
for
Paladin.
bricklayers or PhDs. We have a variety of different levels of education and skills and techniques. One is not better than the other in the Pangburn world. It's just everyone tries to
I am a sub.
engage
Here is
in
a
good
dono.
faith and helpfulness.
BWA.
Very
Those
nice,
are
Doc.
the
Thank you
two
for the $5
kind of physical
dono. Thank you for
properties
being
that
the
hold the
first person
Pangburn
to
universe
support
together,
stream
and that's
today.
what
I
we look for
appreciate it. I appreciate you.
our speakers to bring to the table when they come and speak, and we'll be looking for that from Alex and Dinesh tonight.
Yeah, the main point is to find a small refuge away from, you know, all the toxicity that you end up finding around these topics, and the name calling and the unhelpfulness. And I think that that's like what we try to do on the online space, and as well, I know this Travis's mission within these conversations that hopefully Alex and Dinesh will have tonight.
Yeah, well, I tell you, they were just hanging out doing a mic check here, and they are both pumped up and ready to go tonight. This is truly is an intellectual rumble in the Bronx, and I think that this is going to be the biggest intellectual challenge for each of them tonight. And I know that's saying a lot because Alex is 25, but for those of you who aren't familiar with Alex and haven't been following what he's been doing, he's been going head to head with some seasoned veterans in this space, and he's been doing it extremely well, based on my opinion. And Dinesh, I mean, a lot of people would say that, like, when Dinesh went head to head with Christopher Hitchens, Dinesh came out on top because Hitchens did not address the presuppositional argument that Hitchens didn't address the presuppositional argument that Dinesh was presenting. And I'm sure Alex will, because he's an academic philosopher. This is his domain. So this will be interesting. What are you expecting, Don?
I mean, I think that if you haven't, anyone's kept up with Alex's work, he recently was on Jordan Peterson's podcast, and what they talked about a lot was truth. And the question is the Bible true? Can go in many different directions. Like, which way is someone going to defend the truth? Are they going to go for like a archaeological, scientific truth, which we've seen many years, or are they going to take a much more metaphorical approach to truth? And there's a question: is the discussion going to be able to? Are they going to be able to meet minds there, or not just talk past each other? And that's the difficulty in this conversation.
Right.
Is that each person comes from a different perspective. What they mean.
Incredible
when they
that
say
they're
that
having a
something is
pregame
true.
show.
Well,
They know what
and
they
when
got.
you
They know
start
their
studying
content.
truth in the philosophical domain, you will realize there is this long list that outlines the different criterias of truth that all of us engage with throughout our day, whether we would like to admit it or not. Sometimes we just believe something to be true throughout our day because it's coherent to us. Sometimes for greater claims, we'll require a correspondence-like truth model, like we do in science. But also we'll make appeals to tradition. We will decide that we'll accept something as true simply because it's pragmatic to our purposes. So one thing I always try to say in all of the Q&As I do, all the discussions I do, is look up, and it's a good place to start, the Wikipedia for criteria of truth or criterias of truth, and that is a really good place to go and investigate, especially when you come to hear a conversation like this, because then you'll realize that the matter of which whether something is true or not might not be as black and white as we initially thought.
Oh, damn.
A lot of times we're kind of compelled when something just makes sense to us. We have like that feeling of, oh, aha, this makes sense to me all of a sudden, and then you believe it as true. Yeah. And that's just not, when you take a deeper investigation, that falls apart every time. You end up finding that it's not just because something makes sense to me, it's true. There are much more things for that, and that's what they're both going to discuss today.
Right. And and you know, you're going to get into a lot of these situations, like behind us here. This is Michelangelo's the creation
Chapel,
of man.
Right? In the Sistine Chapel when he
and this is a
Hey, I Jedi. I got no idea what you're talking about, man. Like, don't be like antagonizing other people in chat. Who are these guys? I have no idea. We're skipping ahead.
objects in reality correspond with that claim. But I think tonight we're going to see from Dinesh and Alex that truth isn't black and white. We're going to have 90 minutes of discussion, and
like, I don't even know
after
who you're
that,
talking
we're going to have 20 minutes for a Q&A. So we only have 20 minutes, so make sure your questions are concise and you got them sorted out. Questions end in a question mark, as Matt Dillahunt.
Yeah, and we have vets in our community, man. Like, it's not a hypothetical. We got veterans in the community. Like, Vets will understand. Zuni's literally telling you that they're a vet and asking you to stop. I don't think vets understand.
Auntie always likes to say at our events. Yeah,
All
we don't
I'm
need your
asking is that you
dissertation,
chill.
but let's try to get through as many questions as we can. So, without further ado, please welcome to the stage Alex O'Connor and Dinesh D'Souza.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I don't get why you're talking about veterans and National Guard members and BLM. It's very off topic. And like there are other people in chat who, you know, who've served in the service and like did what they had to do. And like also I don't disagree that there are a lot of people who did things that they weren't proud of in the service, but like maybe bring that up when it's relevant to the conversation.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm not really used to doing this kind of thing without a moderator, but we've had a conversation before coming out here, and we thought it would be good to
no
sort of give
mod.
each other
Okay.
10 minutes each to lay out
No
something of
moderator.
a case. We're not going to be too strict with that, but and then hopefully most of the time we can dedicate to just having a chat. Dinesh said that I can go first, which seems a little odd given that he's, I suppose, technically on proposition, but I wanted to lay out a few different ways that I interpret the question and see where he wants to take it. Some people said that I shouldn't do this debate with this question. It's kind of an impossible question. It's the kind of question that requires more of an explanation to ask than to answer, which is a little bit strange. So I thought, you know, the Bible is not a book. It's a library, and like any good library, it contains an amalgamation of different genres. And so asking if the Bible is true, you might as well ask if the corpus of Shakespeare is true. It sort of betrays a misunderstanding of how people interact with the text. So I thought, will Dinesh argue that
Let's see
the
if we can
Bible
get-
is
let's see if we can get to
literally
Mo.
true, historically true, allegorically true, morally
Happy
true,
birthday, Zuni and
theologically
John.
true, metaphorically true? And I suppose the only thing for it
Your
is to
relative.
sort of try each one on for size. So maybe beginning with Genesis, in an attempt clearly not at historicity, but rather allegory and metaphor, we can deal with one of our types of truth here. We're introduced to Adam and Eve, who are told in no uncertain terms by God not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You may begin to wonder why knowledge of good and evil is such a bad thing, but the thought is interrupted by the introduction of the serpent, who says to Eve, did God say that if you eat of the tree, then in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die? And Eve says, yes. And the serpent says, well, that's not going to happen. God just knows that if you eat of it, you'll become like him, knowing good and evil, and he doesn't want that. That's all. You're not going to die. So Eve famously takes the fruit, eats some, gives some to Adam, and what happens? Do they die in the day thereof? Some people say in a metaphorical sense, yes. We'll get to that in a second, but at least on the surface of it, no. What does happen? God tells us himself. He says, now the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and eat from the tree of life, lest he inherit eternal life.
Damn.
And with this, Adam and Eve are banished from the Garden of Eden. So who's telling the truth here?
Did you already make
This
the
story
jokes
is
about,
quite
joke
mystifying
about
to me, and I'm not the
Worf's
first to point this out. There's actually an apocryphal gospel.
Wait, what is this? What is this? What is this? Well, this is neat. Anyway, I'm gonna open this tab for later. And maybe we'll watch that on the Discord. Anyway, thank you for your service, alerting me to this incredible film.
discovered near
Orf, son
Narcomandia
of
in
Mog,
Egypt
boof.
in the 1940s, dated to around the 2nd
I
or
should
3rd
have seen that
century,
coming.
called the Testimony of Truth, a gospel that didn't make it into the New Testament, which identifies the serpent, interestingly, who's never called Satan in the text, by the way, identifies the serpent with Jesus. I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but it does seem that the sort of allegorical truth of the story leaves a lot to be desired. I'm told that maybe Adam and Eve died a sort of spiritual death, or mortality entered the world. But then we need to ask why it is that God had to proactively banish them from the Garden of Eden. This isn't some natural result of sin that mortality entered the world. They're banished. And the implication is that they could have just as easily reached out and eaten from the tree of life, but God didn't want this to happen. So he guards the gates of Eden with a cherubim, with a flaming sword. I find this quite strange, and I'd like to know what Dinesh thinks of it. Moving on quickly, I suppose, to the events of the later Old Testament, skipping over Exodus, we're introduced to another form of truth that I want to potentially engage in, and that's the concept of moral truth. That's another one that I spoke about in the beginning just there, the concept of moral truth. When we look at some of the military conquests of the Old Testament, bear in mind that the Promised Land pledged to Abraham is not an empty plain. Its indigenous inhabitants had to be, shall we say, displaced by a series of military campaigns ordered by God and carried out by his prophets. Thus we have such commands as in Deuteronomy, chapter 20. When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. Sounds promising to start with. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. Some peace. If they refuse to make peace and engage you in battle, which, why would they do that on these terms? Lay siege to that city. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all the men in it. As for the women, the children, and the livestock, and everything else in the city, they get to go... hold on. You may take these as plunder for yourselves, that's right. And you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. Likewise, in 1 Samuel, we have the destruction of the Amalekites. There's the order, now go attack...
Just, casual God ordering ethnic cleansing and genocides, and the justification for it is, well, I'm God, and I told you so. It's not exactly the most moral order you can imagine.
Attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. I'm told sometimes that this is actually an exercise in hyperbole. God didn't mean everyone. It continues, do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. And if you think that this is hyperbole, consider what happens when Saul does conduct the destruction of the Amalekites as ordered and decides to leave alive the king as well as some of the best of the livestock. He leaves them alive. For this small act of mercy, God responds by saying to the prophet Samuel, I regret that I have made Saul king because he's turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. So not even the animals can escape this genocide. So I'd like to ask Dinesh, I suppose, directly, which is it? Is this a morally corrupt series of events, or do I have to dispel with my moral intuition that genocide, including of innocent children, is a bad thing? There's plenty more to talk about in that regard. I don't want to take up too much time. This isn't, of course, to mention the advocacy and explicit instructions around slavery in the Old Testament. Hopefully we can get onto those too, if we want to go down the moral path.
Yeah,
But I
O.S. Crane,
think
he's
that
been, like,
the
really
most
sharpening his teeth
natural interpretation of the question is the concept of
this
historicity.
genocide question,
The
which
literal
I
truth
appreciate.
of the Bible, that is. This is where I think we have to move to the New Testament, because the genre of the Gospel seems to be historical biography, unlike the mythology of a book like the Psalms or Genesis or Job. And here there's a lot to talk about. We begin with the birth narratives. There are two birth narratives in the Gospels, in Matthew and Luke. Both give different accounts. Both have a genealogy of Jesus, for example, but the genealogies are different. I'm told this is because one records Mary's genealogy and one records Joseph's. You can do this if you like. It doesn't seem like the most natural reading of the text if you're not already predisposed to synchronize the accounts. Then we have, for example, the flight to Egypt, which is only recorded in Luke, which is difficult to reconcile with Matthew's account that they went to the temple in Jerusalem instead. But more importantly, Matthew then says that the family traveled to Nazareth, and he says, so was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he shall be called a Nazarene, quoting the prophets. Now you'll notice if you read an online Bible that where the Old Testament prophets are quoted, there's a little footnote telling you what the prophecy is. In this case, you won't find one, because the prophecy simply doesn't exist. It's not there. There's no such thing. So there are two options here. Either Matthew made up this prophecy or got it wrong, in which case the New Testament is mistaken, or the prophecy does exist, but for some reason fell out of our scriptural tradition and now no longer exists, which makes the accuracy and at least the completeness of the Old Testament suspect. So again, I'd like to ask directly which it is.
Dinesh
Finally, I
has
suppose
no
I should mention
drip, by the way. Absolutely
the contradictions that a lot of people point to in the Gospels. Some of these, I think, are legitimate, some are not. I'll give you some examples very quickly of Gospel contradictions that I do think are real contradictions. First, the date of Jesus' crucifixion. Was it before the Passover, as John states, or was it after the Passover, as the Synoptic Gospels state? Second, Jesus is sending out his disciples to teach. In Mark, he tells them to take nothing with them except a staff. In Matthew and Luke, he says, take nothing with them, including no staff. So do they take a staff or do they not? A pedantic contradiction, but a contradiction nonetheless, and one that's led people like Barnabas Ahern to write entire articles on this. And Augustine himself actually distinguished between a literal staff and a metaphorical staff to explain this difference. Anything, I suppose, except considering the possibility of even the most minor of gospel contradictions. Third, Jesus flipping the tables at the temple. A famous story, but did you know that in the Gospel of John, this takes place at the beginning of Jesus' ministry? In the Synoptics, it takes place near the end. So when did that occur? Mary Magdalene, after the resurrection of Jesus, runs to the disciples in John's Gospel and says, they've taken the Lord, and we do not know where they have put him. Strange thing for her to say if, as the Gospel of Matthew recounts, she's visited by an angel at the tomb who tells her exactly where Jesus is going, and then she's met by Jesus herself on the way to the disciples to bring them the news. Strange for her to then say that they've taken the Lord and we do not know where they've put him. There's more to say on this. Interpolations, things which seem not to be in our oldest manuscripts but end up in newer manuscripts of the New Testament, such as the adulterous woman, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Most scholars agree that this was not in our earliest manuscripts and was added in at a later date. And if we can see that the gospel stories were edited after they were written down, there's no reason to think that they couldn't be edited before they were written down as oral traditions too, as well as the entire ending of Mark 16. There's a longer version and a shorter version, because the longer version simply isn't in our earlier manuscripts. These documents don't seem to have the historical reliability either. So, in conclusion, I've probably spoken for too long here. Are we talking about allegorical truth, moral truth, metaphorical truth, theological truth, historical truth? I suppose what I want to say to Dinesh is take your pick, and I'll probably have something to say about it.
All right. Here we go.
All right, let's hear your rebuttal, Dinesh.
If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up. Is that okay?
Please.
Okay.
Also, that water
I'm
looks
standing
really
up because I
chilled
wanna
and tasty.
Kind of neutralize Alex's accent advantage. I mention this because it seems to me no accident that so many of the prominent so-called new atheists have British accents. I think this is really important to their credibility because...
Is it?
Think of it, if Hitchens and Dawkins and Alex were three southern boys from Louisiana, would they have quite the same impact? I'm not sure. Anyway, this is why I'm standing.
What? That's your first...
I was a little puzzled about this topic and kind of how to get at it.
Okay, look, one thing I will say about Dinesh is that I think that his initial response there, I need to stand up to nullify the accent advantage. Totally great. Totally fine way to begin your statement, but then to continue talking about it is very weird. You know?
Because I've never debated this topic before. I'm not a theologian. I wouldn't even say I'm an expert in the Bible. I'm, I think, believing and intelligent Christian. And so I have done a bunch of debates over the existence of God, over can God's omnipotence and benevolence be reconciled with evil in the world. Those topics appear to be philosophical topics. But when you're dealing with the Bible,
fast travel.
You have a different kind of a work altogether. And I say this because in discussing if something is true or false, you have to ask what is it that the book is doing?
I'm just a simple
what's
country
its
moron.
purpose? What is it there for? let's take an example of what I mean. Let's say if we were debating, is Shakespeare's Julius Caesar true or false? Now, Julius Caesar is a historical account. This is not one of Shakespeare's works of fiction. It's a historical drama. But because Shakespeare's interest is in drama, he emphasizes dramatic events and dramatic confrontation. He does not actually worry about trivial details, anachronisms. If an event occurs over here, Shakespeare does not hesitate to pull it in over here because of the dramatic impact is more powerful this way. And so imagine if someone were to come along and say,
Did you mean
well,
the other Iron
is
Man?
untrue.
Where's the other one?
Because when one of the conspirators shows up to commit the crime, he is, according to Shakespeare, wearing a handkerchief. Well, handkerchiefs didn't really exist in the time of Julius Caesar. This is obviously something Shakespeare got right out of Shakespearean England, stuck it right in there, didn't care about doing that because his purpose is something else, to explore the nature of tyranny, for example. And so to bring the lens of saying this is anachronistic, well, you may or may not be right, but you're like missing the point of the whole book. And you're also missing the point of the author, and you're missing the point of the reader.
From the classroom?
Meaning the author's intention is not to worry about whether or not people in ancient Rome used handkerchiefs.
Thanks, guys.
The point of the author is to dramatize something about the essence of tyranny and conspiracy, and maybe the conflict between tyranny and freedom.
So his argument is that the Bible
and readers of the
literal.
work, understanding that, have always taken it in that spirit. So, as I listen to Alex,
Trying to argue
I think
this
to myself,
about the Bible is silly, though, because people
let's think
clearly
about the Bible.
haven't
What kind of a book it
taken
is? Well, first of all, it is a
metaphorically.
book that exists sort of within a tradition and within a church. I mean, there was no Bible for 300 years, right? The early Christians get together in the 4th century. They put the Bible together. Now, there's already a flourishing church. In fact, right about that time, the Roman emperor will convert to Christianity. Christianity will become the state religion of Rome. And the Bible will become, this assembled Bible will become the handbook of this church. And so it is to this day. Now, that's one point. The second point is that the Bible is a very strange book to be asking this kind of a question about, because the Bible nowhere admits the legitimacy of this kind of inquiry. It's worth noting. The Bible is a book of declaration, I would say of revelation. It never tries to prove anything. It could, but with very rare exceptions,
If you
and
cannot
even those
bedazzle them
exceptions
with
are generally
brilliance,
kind of feeble,
befuddle them with bold
it is
teeth.
a book of sort of bold proclamation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Boom. It's declared
there we are.
as something true. Now,
But I'd like to get all the items down here first.
I want to reflect on that for a moment. Before I do, let me say, if you think about that sentence by itself, it's a puzzle.
Precious items.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Obviously, somebody is writing this. But who? No one was there.
What?
Except God. And yet, the sentence does not say, in the beginning, I created the heavens and the earth. There's
Dinesh's going
apparently
for
an
the
observer.
Chewbacca defense. Yeah, there's...
And the observer is recording, and God is in fact in the narrative. God is in fact the subject of it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So as I think about this statement, I think that first of all, it is an astounding claim, completely counterintuitive. And by counterintuitive, I mean, well, I get most of my intuitions from Aristotle. Aristotle, using you could call it philosophical common sense, says the universe has always been around.
Damn it.
It's always been here. You don't need an explanation for how it got
Grab
started
me.
because it never got started. It's always existed. And the Greeks also believed, as you probably know, out of nothing can
Grab
come
me.
nothing. So therefore, if you first had nothing, you get a universe. The Bible goes against this Greek tradition and states categorically, as a matter of fact,
You know, maybe Dinesh should have gotten some grounding in theology. At least then he would have been able to construct a goddamn argument about it. He would have learned some apologetics.
that first there was nothing, and then there was a universe
Volcano Manor,
because God
baby.
made it. So there are some factual assertions here. The assertion that the universe had a beginning, the assertion that the universe, in a sense, came out of nothing, and of course the assertion that the universe was created by God. So we can, if we want to go down this road, I'm not going to do it right now, explore whether this astounding claim that was made by the ancient Jewish writers with no evidence at all, no empirical investigation, no scientific.
Sorry, wait, when he references kerchief in Shakespeare, there was no literal kerchief. Shakespeare wrote that Ligarius removed his kerchief to join the plot as a metaphor for removing the philosophical veil of secrecy and joining the plot to kill Caesar. There's no literal kerchief. His original thesis regarding historical anachronism holds no weight. This dude is a fucking moron. Well, yeah, of course. Because he's saying like the Bible is metaphorical, that it's not literal. Like that his rejoinder is like, oh, well, it's as real as a work of fiction. Which is not a great argument.
Experiment, no attempt to measure the redshift of galaxies. Nevertheless, the ancient Hebrew writer says, we know this to be true because God told us. And now here we are, more than 2,000 years later, really more like 3,000 years later, and we're in a position to ask, is this claim true? So I'll defer that. I'm happy to discuss that, and we probably will. But this is one way to think about whether what the Bible says is true. It's making these categorical assertions. And most of these assertions, I would argue, are in the domain of revelation. The Bible is, in fact, a revelation. A revelation. Right here we have a problem, because how does one approach a revelation?
If I go down this way, I can't
philosophically?
Get back up. I'd like to have a place to
Alex, you
teleport
just
back
tell me
to.
when I'm out of time. Okay, I'm just gonna go until you stop me.
3 minutes, I think.
I'm okay?
3 minutes.
I got 3 minutes. Oh wow, it's just getting started. All right, I'll save
He's
some of my
used to
stuff.
having
but,
a goddamn 2-hour time
let me just say
slot.
this. What is the point of revelation at all? You know, we have a guy here who says he's a cosmic
Dinesh
skeptic.
even sounds like he knows he's doing
Many of you
poorly.
probably think you're skeptics. And so you might ask, well, why the heck do we need revelations? We have reason. Well, turns out that here we are,
Oh, it's the only way I
flung into the world. And if we reflect upon this fact and reflect upon our place in the world, several important questions pop out that are the inevitable result of reason, but which reason is utterly incapable of answering. Not that reason has an answer to date. Reason cannot answer. What are these questions? 1, why is there a world? 2, what is our purpose in it? Why are we here? 3, what happens after we die? 4, is our passionate concern with justice, with morality, with goodness, that is constantly betrayed in the actual life of the world, ever cosmically vindicated after the world or beyond the world? So I could go on, but I'm giving you 4 straightforward questions that no intelligent person, I think, can avoid having to raise, and yet to which there is no available or even conceivable answer. It's not as if there's no answer, but we'll get an answer tomorrow. Because let me put it this way. Let's take the question about life after death. And I'll close on this and open the door to further inquiry. Let's talk about life after death. Is there life after death, yes or no? Shakespeare says that death is the undiscovered country.
I don't know.
No traveler who has gone there has ever come back.
Why does he keep going to
I think we probably have to
Shakespeare,
agree
man?
with this. You might get some tiny hints from like near-death experiences, but by and large, we don't know. And not only do we not know, we have no way of knowing. The key point here is that probability, the absence of evidence is the evidence of absence. This is all gobbledygook. Because all of this is only based on prior experience. If you show me a guy and tell me he has 3 eyes, I won't believe you. Because I've seen thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, and I've got a lot of experience, and based upon that, the probability that a guy can show up with 3 eyes may seem to me to be pretty low. But the question of life after death, if I think of an analogy for it, it's something more like the possibility of aliens. It's not even an exact analogy, but it's a similar analogy because if I say to Alex, you believe in aliens, there's no probabilistic way to say, yes, we have nothing in our experience to go this way or that way. And here's my point. It is exactly when reason not only breaks down, but reason can't even go there, that revelation steps in and delivers an answer. And here we are debating, is that answer true? And the question I want us to think about, at least to get started tonight, with what tools are you going to deliver a true or false verdict on subjects that are outside the domain of reason itself? I mean, Immanuel Kant says on the first page of the Critique of Pure Reason, before we discuss the great reach, whether we discuss whether this is reasonable or that's not reasonable and whether this is empirical, he goes, we first got to set the boundaries of reason. What is it that reason can and cannot know? Why? Because what Kant is basically getting at is that once you go beyond the reach of reason, faith is not unreasonable at all. Why? Because you have nothing else. So what I want to emphasize here, and I'm happy to discuss all the specifics we've covered today, or Alex has covered today, but essentially the Bible is something that is taught in church. It's a tool for ministry, for exhortation, to get people to live better lives, to help them deal with their life in the world. I have never heard a single pastor, for example, and I'm quite sure this doesn't happen in Jewish synagogues as well, going, you know what, let's go out and find the Amalekites of our day and kill them right now. Nobody says that. No one even thinks that. No one reads the passage that way.
I have really bad news for Dinesh D'Souza. There are absolutely evangelical pastors alive right now. People like Greg Locke, for example, who absolutely read those passages that way. Absolutely they do. Also, goddamn, how long is Alex going to give him to talk?
Nobody reads the passage of the fall in the way that Alex described it. And so we have a little bit of a problem.
Okay, wait. So basically, to sum up the points he's made so far, and chat, please add any if I forget them. But his points are, the Bible's metaphorical. It's not meant to be read literally, and no one could possibly interpret this metaphorical text as calling for imminent violence against people against certain groups of people. That seems to be his main argument so far, which seems to be kind of citing, like seeding the central premise of the debate of, is the Bible true? I think what he's trying to do here, if I had to attribute him a strategy at all, which is extremely charitable on my part, would be that he is trying to reframe what truth is to be like the kind of truth you can get out of a work of fiction. Like the kind of truth that you can find about like the tenacity of like the human spirit that is reflected in the works of like Shakespeare or, Marvel movies, or, like he's wanting to like connect it to like this kind of feeling of, perpetual truth or like perception of truth without any actual factual claims. Yeah, he's trying to divorce it from the realm of material reality. Babe, want to start XCOM but Hunt God? That sounds like the coolest premise for a strategy game that I can imagine. Someone make that, please. Someone make like an XCOM like game about a bunch of like disaffected gays, going on a road trip to kill God. There we go.
We got a book. It's a book that exists within a community for a
Church
purpose
and the Bible
that
are
the
the
community
tools
is
of power
extremely
to
clear
construct a
about.
community apparatus to
This
behave in a
book is
particular
used
way
every
to
single
indoctrinate, to
Sunday
inculcate.
millions of times and
Yeah,
all
manic
around the world.
anti-fascist, I'd agree.
It's used in
on a lot of
Protestant and
those
Catholic
points.
churches. Obviously, there are interpretive communities that differ
Oh.
on how things can be read and understood. There's also the whole separate question of the relationship of the Old Testament to the
Cool.
New. There's an old saying that goes that the
Well, I hate this.
New Testament is in the Old
I don't
concealed.
think I ever did this fight.
The
in my
Old
first
Testament is in the
playthrough.
New revealed. So the Old Testament and the New exist in a kind of odd relationship
OS
to each
Crane,
other. In fact,
I would play the
so
shit out of that
odd
game on my
that
stream.
one party, the Jews, repudiates the
Yeah,
relationship
honestly,
altogether.
Netanyahu, just call it attack
And from
and
the
dethrone
Christian
God.
point of view,
Gays will
the
buy
Old
it.
Testament is
We're
incorporated,
suckers for that shit.
but superseded by the New, and there are different ways of looking at that relationship, which we can get into. Let me just close by saying this.
Rather a long 3 minutes there.
Oh,
I
it's a
think.
rather long 3 minutes.
It's maybe you meant you finish soon in the way that Jesus promised.
No,
to
no,
come
no.
back
Let me
soon.
pause right here because
And ambiguous soon. But I'd love to
God,
question
Alex
some of the
is
things
so
you've already
good.
said.
All right,
if you don't
let's
mind.
throwing this
we will put the ball in
these
your
little
court.
bits of
So I
shade.
think what's going to
So
happen
good.
now is we're going to go into discussion.
Hope so.
Right? Okay. And you're going to ask me some questions. We'll discuss, and I'll ask you some.
Sure, and I'm happy to essentially
Honestly, he's
take the things
probably
that I said in my opening
perceiving
statement and
Dinesh's
slot them in and apply them to the things that you
long-windedness
just
as
said
a
right there.
slight.
So you began by saying that the Bible is a strange book to ask these questions of because of its purpose. I assume you'd agree with me that the Bible is a collection of books rather than a singular text, with different authors, different intentions, and most importantly, different genres. So the first question I suppose I'd like to ask you is, do you agree, for example, that at least some biblical texts are attempts at historical biography, such as in the Gospels?
Of course, I would agree with that. But let me just qualify it this way.
Sure.
When we think of the Bible as revealed, the question now becomes, what do we mean? Did God write the book? Did God inspire the book and human beings wrote it? Did God show human beings events that they then described in their own words? Okay, so the reason these things are important is it seems to me, to answer the question I raised earlier about in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, the way I understand it is that it's a perfect revelation shown to a gospel, to a Bible, to a Jewish scribe who sees it, so to speak, but writes it in his own words. When I look at the book of Revelation, same thing.
And does it get anything wrong? Do those scribes get anything wrong?
It's quite possible that they, when you say get anything wrong, they are writing it in human terms. I mean, you know.
Well, I mean the specifically mundane human things. I'm not talking about when the author of Genesis says that God created the heavens and the earth, or talks about the Spirit moving across the face of the water. This is clearly mythological. This is clearly an attempt at mythological writing. That's fine. It would be silly to ask if that's true or not. But when somebody...
I don't think it is mythological writing at all. I think that it is simply... I mean, put it this way. If we were in the year 4000 BC, if we were John the Divine, and let's just say that God showed us in a vision the actual end of the world, right? Sure. Apocalypse.
Yeah.
We would then write down the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, death and famine and destruction. We're not engaging in myth-making at all. I'm actually writing what I see.
So you think there'll be a 7-headed demon?
Of course not. I'm saying that to me, what I'm seeing is so, let's just say, for example, it is a thermonuclear explosion of a kind that the ancient Bible writer doesn't even know what it is, right? And the consequence of it is death and destruction and famine. He's going to write it down the way he sees
that
it.
Is a
but where's he going to get the 7-headed dragon and the prostitute from?
This is his
like a human attempt to describe a nuclear reaction?
Yes, because when words and images fail, metaphor is the actual conduit to truth.
Now, I'd understand if that were the case, if you said that perhaps after a nuclear blast, somebody describes it as the gods of fire descending upon man with their flaming swords or something like that. But like a prostitute and a 7-headed dragon?
Well, first of all, I'm not saying it is a nuclear explosion. The problem is we're given this admittedly phantasmagorical future account, right? Sure. It is so wrenching and powerful that many people, for example, have tried to render it by art, and it's not easy to do it, right? It's not easy to do it because
there we go.
We have to stop and realize, first of all, that we're dealing not only with the limitations of perception, but the limitations of language. Let me give you a simple example. I come to America from India. I have never eaten a mushroom. Okay? I ask you, Alex, what does a mushroom taste like?
Does India not have mushrooms?
I would submit that you would be completely unable to render to me in words, however...
Wait, actual question. Does India not have, like, edible mushrooms?
Lengthy and ornate.
I know some of you are more cultured than I am. Like, does India not have, like, edible mushrooms? Yeah, I killed the abductors. India has many mushrooms. Hey, Super Saint, how you doing? Thanks for coming. And yes, they do need to... Dinesh D'Souza in particular needs to shut his fashy little face.
Nate, what a mushroom actually...
Okay, so India does in fact have mushrooms. I'm pretty sure I've Indian food with mushrooms. Okay, so... him being Indian had no bearing on the story whatsoever. Okay, cool.
That may be true, but I was asking, for example, about Jesus' presentation at the Temple of Jerusalem after his birth. This is not like trying to describe a mushroom or the end of the world.
No. Okay, so now let's talk about that.
Hold on a second. This is a historical event that's being recorded by one New Testament writer at the same time as another New Testament writer says that the family had traveled to Egypt. I don't think this is an attempt at metaphor or allegory, as I would say of Genesis. Whether you think that is or not, I would say that in the case of the Gospels, we can agree that on at least some instances, this is a clear attempt at mundane history. This is not an attempt at writing some kind of metaphor to explain a truth that's otherwise unknowable to the human mind. It's a very straightforward attempt to record what actually happened, and they contradict each other.
They contradict each other because they're written by 4 different people.
Sure. So one of them is wrong.
Let me ask you this. If God were writing it, I'm quite sure he would have written it once. You would need 4.
Sure.
Okay?
So some of them are wrong then?
No. Okay, so let's, when you say they're wrong, let's consider Luke's gospel for a minute.
Yep.
Luke is a medical doctor. Luke is not present at the events being described.
Mm-hmm.
Luke is virtually in the position of Thucydides writing the Peloponnesian War. Now, Thucydides did fight in the war, but in most of the events described by Thucydides in the Peloponnesian War, he wasn't there.
Making them very unreliable, right?
No, on the contrary. It is, in fact, the most reliable account of the Peloponnesian War that historians have.
Let's not say that it is reliable, though.
No, it is. What I'm trying to say is that when you're talking about historicity, and you're talking about historicity now in the ancient world, you have to recognize that these people are not approaching it as modern historians. Luke is going around interviewing people.
So let me ask this very, very straightforwardly then.
Okay.
Luke says that after the birth of Jesus, the family fled to Egypt. Matthew says that they went to the Jerusalem temple. Are they both correct, or is one of them wrong?
Who the heck cares? I mean, look.
Well, I do, and so
well,
do
you
probably
do,
the
but,
people who are listening to a debate about whether the Bible is true.
let me say why.
Oh my god. Oh my god, dude. Okay, so quite Kitsune, we are. You came to a debate about the historicity, the historical accuracy of the Bible, the truth of the Bible, and you have multiple accounts, and the Bible is, for those of you who are not familiar with the Christian faith, held to be sacrosanct. Like, it is supposed to be, like, written under the influence of God. Like, God descended upon mortal man and inspired the word of God in the Bible. And Alex, quite reasonably, is like, well, these two accounts say, immediately after this event, two different things took place. So which is it wrong? And Dinesh is just like, who cares? And it's like, well, supposedly you do. You came here to debate that very point, and I guess you're just immediately ceding it at the gate. Why use hands to write it if you're God? Do you have hands? Or you energy, spirit? What? Yeah, honestly, God of the New Testament needs to up his game, okay? God of the New Testament doesn't hold a candle to God of the Old Testament, okay? God of the Old Testament, back in the day, knew how to do some work, He got his hands dirty making those tablets, okay? Making the 10 commandments. The 20 commandments that then Moses, that goddamn buffoon, broke. And then he also, what was the other thing he did? Oh, yeah, he became a burning bush. That's how I want to get my, religious revelation. Don't make me write a book. Don't make me do that. I'm lazy. Come to me in the form of a giant wheel of fire in the sky, the middle of which is an eyeball that seeks out all light in the universe only to snuff it out. Give me that be not afraid kind of God and angelic creation, okay? But when we're talking about books, I have a degree in English literature. I'm qualified to read those books. And I'm not that impressed. Not that impressed. Ansia, thank you very much for gifting a sub over on Twitch. I appreciate it. And we've been going for almost 2 hours now, and just want to say thank you to the folks who supported stream today. That's right. I'm thanking you, Ansia, right off the bat again. And also I wanted to say thank you to Very Knifey Duck. 2 of you. I appreciate it, all right? Thank you so goddamn much. And Ansia, this is just for you. Okay, this is just for you. Okay. Daddy. The Bible is full of contradictions. It's what got me sent out of Catholic classes as a child for just asking questions about contradictions. I fucking read the Bible like a good girl. Exactly! Exactly. Like, frankly, a lot of the people who leave the faith just actually bothered to read the book. That's right. You get a, oh, Daddy, and oh, Mommy, in my unique way. Riverboat Jack leads the way. Here we go.
Why what you care about is is not only trivial, but indicates a kind of unwillingness to try to get what the text is trying to
I'll
communicate.
tell you why I don't think it's trivial.
Why
Because
is
I
it
think
not
that the
trivial?
reason why Luke may have invented the flight to Egypt, he tells us. Luke says, when he records the flight to Egypt, and then they return from Egypt, he says, this is so that we can fulfill the prophecy from Hosea chapter 11, out of Egypt I shall call my son. Now, in Hosea, God is talking here about the nation of Israel. At least in this case, unlike the Matthew prophecy, the prophecy actually exists and we can interrogate it. It seems to me like what Luke is doing here is attempting to display Jesus as the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy. And in fact, he tells us that that's what he's doing. Therefore, if it is the case that Jesus didn't go to Egypt and didn't come out of Egypt on his return, then this would undermine Luke's attempt to identify Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy. That's why I think it is relevant.
Well, look.
And not trivial.
Right, but I think that the...
Would you agree with that? I mean, do you think it's a completely trivial point? If it's so trivial,
No, I think that the point,
why
as
is
you
it included in the first place?
point as you stated it before, is trivial. The point you're now raising is not trivial, but the point you're now raising is one in which you have 3 centuries of Jewish-Christian disputation about whether Jesus is the Messiah, okay? And by and large, the disputation breaks down in this way. The Jews are the biblical literalists, and the Christians are the sort of metaphorical readers. And I say this because let's take a very famous passage that bears on this very topic, where Jesus is talking about the destruction of the temple. And the Jews go, you said the temple would be destroyed. Now, interestingly, Jesus did say the temple would be destroyed, and the temple was in fact destroyed in 70 AD. In fact, 40 years after Jesus said that, the temple was in fact physically razed to the ground, and the Jews dispersed in a huge diaspora. But my point is, Jesus doesn't reply that. Jesus doesn't say, hey, listen, wait 40 years. Jesus says, no, you're misreading me completely. When I said the temple, I was actually speaking of the temple of my body.
Well, he doesn't tell them that.
But this is stated.
But we're told that that's what he means.
We're told that's what he means. So what I'm getting at is, here you have a case where you have an event, you have a Jewish literalist reading and a Christian metaphorical reading.
Yeah.
Another example, and
So would you say then the flight to Egypt is a metaphor? Is that what you're trying to say? In other words, I'm trying to understand what it is that you're doing here to actually answer the question.
I read the
that I'm
Talmud,
asking you,
bitch
which is about, because here's my theory. Here's an idea.
Okay.
Luke, the author of Luke, invents the flight to Egypt in order to identify Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, meaning that when we read Luke, we should note that where it appears that he's making historical claims, we should note his willingness to twist history in order to fulfill a theological
well, you don't know
claim.
if he's doing that. You're assuming that. This is your theory.
No, but
What I'm saying is that that's one thesis to explain the contradiction between Luke and Matthew. If you want to say that it's trivial, then fine, but we still have to explain how it comes about. And what I'm saying is one idea of how this comes about leads to us undermining our trustworthiness of Luke.
He's like, well, how you don't know that it's not real? It's like, well, but that it not being real explains the contradiction, ding dong. Like, that's, both of these stories can't be true. One of them has to be true, and the other one is like bending the truth. And like, it's fine if you are not into that idea, but like, I don't know, it just seems like this is the most self-explanatory, like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god! Okay, it's fine.
What I'm asking you for is your explanation that would not lead to us having to undermine the trustworthiness of Luke.
I don't have the ability to referee that passage. I'm not aware of this contradiction. I'll have to go back and look and see.
That's fine.
Go and look it up. But what I am doing is I'm questioning your methodology and your kind of. You
don't even know what his methodology is.
What would I call it?
You don't even know what passage.
You got the Jews and the Christians arguing about events, and they're very complex events, and they're very powerfully meaningful events. Like, let's take, for example, Abraham and Isaac are going up the mountain, and Isaac says to Abraham something to the effect of, where is the lamb for the sacrifice? And Abraham says to him, God will provide. God will provide. Now, in the Jewish reading, this whole thing has got to be
come
understood
on,
in terms
come on,
of here's
okay.
Abraham, he's willing to sacrifice his son, God says stop, it's a tale of obedience. In the Christian reading, it's not that, or it's not only that. The Christian reading is, Jesus is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. So when Isaac says, where's the lamb? And Abraham says, God will provide, it is a
Vic Bystrom, thank you for
foreshadowing
subscribing. I don't know where you
a
subscribed.
significant event in the New Testament. Now again, as I say, the Jews and the Christians argued this for 3 centuries and more. I'm not even trying to adjudicate who's right, but I'm saying you're waltzing in, coming with neither of these two assumptions. In fact, I assume you think that the Old Testament is as mythological as the New.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I need to.
And I guess what I'm saying is that people who read the Bible to understand what the Bible is trying to say and what we can learn from it, do what the Jewish rabbis did and do what theologians like Augustine and Anselm and so many others have done. They don't really do what you're doing, which is saying, hey, Luke must have talked to a guy who thought it happened over here, but in fact, you know, this guy says the roof was thatched, but another guy says they let the guy in through the roof who had to be healed. Contradiction.
Yep.
And I'm like, is this your way of trying to say the Bible is not true?
Yes, it is. The Old
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
It's precisely what I'm
Hey,
doing.
BB
The Old
Cupid-
Testament
BB
is
Cupid,
not
how
fully
you doing?
mythological. I think Genesis is mythological. I think that Exodus makes more of an attempt at history, but has mythological undertones. I think that the military conquests I mentioned in my opening statements are attempts at describing literal historical events. I think
I
that
agree.
Psalms are poetry.
Do you suppose Alex knew what he was getting into with this? Like, do you guys think he knew that like Dinesh was gonna be like this big of kind of like a pot of nonsense on this issue? Like, part of me wonders. Like, I feel like maybe not. There we go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. The Inferno Crociere.
I think that Job is mythology. I don't think a man called
I
Job
agree.
actually existed, right? And so there are lots of different genres here. The reason I'm asking about the contradictions in the gospel, and I understand if you don't want to talk about the specific example of Egypt and Jerusalem, fine, whatever. Maybe you can send me an email about it later or something. That's fine. But the reason I bring it up is to say that there are lots of these, and in each case, if we try to look at why they might be contradicting each other, the reasons I think we're given
Spec into
tell us
Crozier? I
that
might.
the historicity of
looks
this
cool.
text should be in dispute. For example, I mentioned the date of Jesus' death. The Synoptic Gospels specifically place this after the Passover meal. They have the Last Supper as the Passover meal.
Okay.
John uniquely sets it before the Passover because he has the theological purpose of wanting to depict Jesus as the Passover lamb.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a contradiction if the Gospels are supposed to be historical accounts of what happened to Jesus, which I imagine if we were having a debate about whether Christianity were true, about whether the God of the Bible existed, you might put forward, say, an argument for the resurrection of Jesus. You might say, well, we have good historical evidence to think that Jesus rose from the dead, and you might point to the story of the crucifixion and the disciples seeing him after he died. This is a common thread. The problem is that if we're treating it as historical in an area like that, then we have to engage with it as a historical text. Why would they contradict each other? I would say for the same reason that Luke contradicts Matthew in the birth narratives, because they're attempting to make a theological point, which tells us at least, and maybe you think that the New Testament is an entirely theological and in no way a historical text. Would you agree at least that the New Testament writers are seemingly willing to adapt the historicity of an event in order to serve a theological point? Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. I would agree that.
Well, that definitely is a contradiction.
Well, it's not a contradiction because,
How?
I mean, Thucydides is
tell.
relaying historical events to make a moral point about the nature of politics, and both are completely consistent with each other.
Sure.
It's not as if Thucydides is. So he's a student of power politics. He is making a point. His speeches are driven at making a point, but the point is excavated out of the actual events. Now, I think that there's a reason that we're given for perspectival accounts of Jesus' life. And they're not identical. In fact, as I say, if they were identical, you wouldn't need 4. The point of reading these, and I think the way to read them. Let me say a word. If you want to determine veracity, you have to operate a little bit like a jury, and by that I mean, pick up the Gospel of Mark, the first of the Gospels. Now, by the way, these Gospels are written very proximate to the events they describe. And I say this by the standards of, we're talking about historicity of any historical document.
70 AD, would you say, for Mark?
Yes, I mean, I would say within decades of the events that they describe.
But crucially, would you agree with most historians that this happened, for example, after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple, thereby allowing the author of Mark to put the prediction in the words of Jesus' mouth without being anything miraculous?
This is a highly debated point because Mark's gospel leaves off incomplete and has what seems to be at the very end an added section. I don't want to debate that little fragment of Mark. Here's what I'm getting at. If you've never read the Bible, and we've all read the Bible in a way, I was raised Catholic, and so I was habituated to going to Sunday Mass and sort of felt like I didn't know the Bible. I've heard these stories read and so on. But it was a completely different experience for me as an adult to go back with critical skepticism and just read the book of Mark straight through.
Did you go with critical skepticism? It has the complete ring of authenticity.
And I say this because not only does it give you little details that don't really seem to even belong there. It's clearly not written with a polemical purpose exclusively. Mark will tell you things that not only seem irrelevant, but at other times undermine what he's trying to say. And that is the true ring of authenticity. Because if someone were to... What's that?
An example?
Well, here's an example. In the Jewish tradition, the testimony of a woman was considered inherently suspect. But the testimony of men generally reliable. And therefore, not that the testimony of women was disregarded altogether, but you needed, for example, many women to say the same thing.
He got me good. He got me good.
Now, the Gospels tell us that when Jesus was crucified and put in the tomb, if I were Mark and I were Luke and I were trying to be inventive and I were trying to establish a truth for posterity, I would not have it that a group of, let's just say, hysterical women, Mary Magdalene, whoever it was, a group of women go to the tomb, and they're the ones who find the tomb empty. This is like a little dubious, because most people are going to go, well, yeah, we know, but women, you know. So here's an example of the Gospels insisting upon a point that would only make sense if that was actually the way it happened.
Well, allow me to answer that, if I may.
Go ahead.
If I may. This is a commonly presented argument for the historicity of the resurrection, which, by the way, now we're talking as...
Well, I'm not... No, hold on. I didn't say it's an argument for the historicity of the resurrection. I said it was an argument...
Let me say a word.
Okay.
Now we're talking about these texts as they are historical texts. The thing about the women is, look, this is quite straightforward to me. Who anoints bodies? Who goes to tombs and anoints bodies after someone dies? It's not men, it's women. And so if the authors of the Gospels had the men go to the tomb to anoint the body, which is what Mary and the other women were doing when they went to the tomb, that itself would be very strange and give us reason to doubt the historicity of the event. In other words, it's like if there's a task that women do, and that task is how Jesus' empty tomb is discovered, then why would he invent it? Why would they invent a story that has men going and doing it? Secondly, you said that you need multiple women's testimony. How many women go to the tomb? Multiple. Thirdly, what do the women do immediately after seeing the empty tomb? They run and tell the men who come and verify it for us. Right. So I don't think that this fulfills the criterion of embarrassment at all. In fact, I think the opposite is true. I think that if this was an invented story, I'm not saying it is, by the way, but if it were, then of course we could expect the people who discover the empty tomb to be women, because it's women who go to anoint the body at the tomb.
Okay, so let's put together what I just said and you just said,
not gonna lie.
And let's ask the question, based upon what you said and what I said, did it happen that way? And I would submit that what you have done, see, you're doing special pleadings. You could argue I'm doing special pleadings, but I would admit that
Oh,
the
he was even
thrust
poisoned
of the
too. He was
Bible
gonna
and the
die.
thrust of the
Fuck, we were
story
gonna win that.
is in fact aimed at delivering a truth from revelation.
That's fine.
What you're trying to do is saying, all right, I can't contest that because that's outside the domain of reason. But what
Dinesh
I'm going
is
to
so
do is
far
I'm going to
below
adopt
Alex
sort of the
in this debate,
nitpicking
it's
strategy, and because we got
ridiculous.
4 accounts, I'm going to
hold on, you're the one who brought that up. You're the one who said that
I did.
women discovering
and
the
I'm
tomb.
saying nothing you've said has even slightly refuted it.
You don't think anything I just said refuted the idea that would be something you wouldn't expect from the gospel authors if it were invented?
No, here's what I'm saying.
don't think
I'm saying that I mean, let's look at what we agree on, what we disagree on. You agree that in that culture, the testimony of women in general counts for less.
I think this is something that Josephus tells us, but it's impossible to know what sort of culturally people actually thought at the time. It's impossible for us to know. But I'm happy to grant it, yeah, sure.
It's impossible for us to know, even though Josephus says it. Okay,
But that's in a court of law, right?
No, but what I'm saying is, if you're applying the is it impossible for us to know, I would suggest to you it is impossible for us to know that it was the absolute and unwavering duty of women to provide all the ointments. You've stated that as a fact.
No.
I would say it's impossible for us to know.
What I'm saying is that if somebody's reading this text and you say, well, if this were invented, why would it be women who discover the tomb? That would be embarrassing for them, the so-called embarrassment criterion. I'm saying, would it not be just, is not the fact that we're told why they go into the tomb to anoint the body, is this not just reason enough?
No.
I mean, look, I'm not the one claiming I know how this went down, by the way. And also, you just accused me a second ago of special pleading. I wanted to ask you what it was that I'm specially pleading.
Well, what I'm saying is that you have an event. These events are described with great precision and a sort of eyewitness presence there. Now, we know in some cases there weren't eyewitnesses, but they're nevertheless described, this is the way it happened. And 4 guys are telling you their point of view, right?
Yeah, none of them the women who actually discovered the tomb, by the way.
No, you're not hearing from the women, I agree. You're 4 male gospel writers, apparently. Now,
apparently?
What? I
What?
lost my train of thought for a second, sorry.
Well, I also don't want to get too caught up on this specific example, but I suppose we'll have to sort of leave it with the audience in the live stream. The point that I'm trying to make is that the historicity of at least some of this is important for Christianity. The historicity of the life of Jesus. Like, if it were discovered historically speaking that a man called Jesus never existed, that would completely undermine Christianity.
Are you saying
important.
that?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
Of course I'm not saying
Let me
that.
ask you a different
I'm
question.
saying that historically it matters. The crucifixion, the resurrection, these are matters which historically matter to Christians. And so when we're dealing with a historical account of what happened, when they're riddled with contradictions, I think that that's a problem. If you don't think that's a problem, then that's fine. But I think that the people listening and wanting to find out if the Bible is true might see that as reason to undermine the trust of the text.
No, first of all, almost everything that we know about those events in terms of modern historical reliability, for example, where is the site of Jesus' crucifixion? Unknown.
Allegedly
Disputed. There are a couple of potential sites, but it's not known. What day of the year was Jesus born? Unknown. We think Jesus lived for 33 years, but let's say that one of the Gospels said it was 33 and the other one said it was 34. Do you think that would actually refute Christianity?
No.
Okay, it would not.
No.
It would actually be quite understandable that you'd have 2 guys and they would get that and they'd be off on that, and this contradiction would be trivial because the issue is not whether Jesus lived for 33 or 34 years old.
Right,
the issue is something...
that's a different kind, because if you could tell me that the reason why they had specifically chosen those ages was to serve a theological point, knowing that they're willing to sort of adapt history in order to make a theological point, I wouldn't say that that point alone undermines Christianity. What I would say is that it undermines our trustworthiness in the Bible. I'm not saying that any one of these contradictions can tell us Christianity is false.
No, but I'm saying
firstly, the question is not if Christianity is true, it's whether the Bible is true. It may be the case that a man called Jesus came down to earth, rose from the dead. It's just that the gospel accounts get the details wrong, which mean that the Bible is not correct, but
No,
the story
it
of the
doesn't
Bible
mean that.
tells us true. It
Look.
means that Christianity is true, but the Bible is false. That's perfectly consistent.
I'm simply saying that what you're doing is you are supplying a motive
Fuck!
that is completely made up, and that I could engage in exactly. Let's just take, for example, the 33 versus the 34 years. Now, here's what I'm saying. If there was such a contradiction, and I were being you, I would say, oh, the reason that Matthew said it was 33 is because 3 is the number of the Trinity. And so 33 has a certain theological resonance because 3 and 3 is 33. Hold on. And then I would come around and say, well, the reason the other guy said 34 is actually 3 plus 4 is 7. God made the world in 7 days. 7 is known to be a number fraught with theological significance. And I'm saying, this is basically Alex BS.
Dinesh, the gospel writers tell us that's why it happened.
God. Can I need to watch that again. I need to watch this again.
Is you are supplying a motive that is completely made up and that I could engage in exactly, let's just take for example the 33 versus the 34 years. Now here's what I'm saying. If there was such a contradiction and I were being you, I would say, oh,
he's trying to say Alex's argument is numerology. That's
is because
insane.
3 is the number of the Trinity. And so 33 has a certain theological resonance because 3 and 3 is 33. Hold on. And then I would come around and say, well, the reason the other guy said 34 is actually 3 plus 4 is 7. God made the world in 7 days. 7 is known to be a number fraught with theological significance. And I'm saying, this is basically Alex BS.
Dinesh, the gospel writers tell us that's why it happened. They say that the reason the family went to Egypt was to fulfill the prophecy of Hosea.
Okay, and so you,
in other words, if the gospel writer, and now imagine that the gospel writers had written what you just said. Imagine in the actual text, one of them said he was 33 when he died because of the number 3 in its significance.
Correct.
And another said that he was 34 because of the number 4 in its significance. That would be a contradiction, and in that instance, not just a historical contradiction, but a spiritual and theological one too.
Actually, no, it actually wouldn't.
I'll say it. Come on.
It wouldn't. I'll tell you why.
You don't think that's a contradiction?
No, it's not a contradiction at all. Because the gospel writers are constantly
contradicting each other.
No, drawing, not contradicting each other. If they were constantly contradicting each other, you wouldn't have spent half an hour on a single event that frankly I haven't even heard of. In fact, no one's ever heard of. I've never ever heard anyone discuss this in any context. So which event? This prophecy about Hosea. I'll go back and look at all this. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you had a plethora of contradictions, you wouldn't be spending the entire debate on one that I'm sure no one in the audience has heard of either.
Hold on.
But okay, you've heard of it. Probably because you've been listening to his YouTube channel, right?
You don't think that this is a highly discussed point of contention in the Gospels, the flight to Egypt and its contradiction with
the flight to Egypt. Look, the flight to Egypt is an important event in the Gospel. I'm not saying.
Dinesh, also you said, why could you only bring up this one example? Take your pick. The date of Jesus' crucifixion, whether they're to take a staff or not to take a staff, the dating of Jesus flipping the tables at the temple, Mary Magdalene and what she says.
He can't handle the stupid race.
When the temple curtain rips. In the Gospel of Luke, it says that this happened.
Yeah, like that's kind of like Dinesh's power, right? Like he has like a nuclear level of stupidity radiating off of him at any given time, right? Like he just like he's like a, I don't know, like a hunter. If like hunters used just the slow march of radiation poisoning to kill their prey, he's literally that. Just like, yes, I'm going to expose this dirty nuclear reactor in the natural wilds, and I'm just going to wait until my prey dies of cancer.
Happens before Jesus' death, and in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark it says that it happens afterwards. Like, we can go through any of these contradictions that you like, but the problem is that what you're going to tell me is that it's trivial. And then when I try to explain that it's not trivial, you say, oh, well, I haven't even heard of it and no one else really cares about this. When other people do, by the way, this is a highly discussed point of contention in the gospel. All I'm asking you to do is say that this is, when I mentioned the staff in my opening statement, and I said that whether or not they take a staff is a totally trivial contradiction. I'm not bothered by that. If I were a Christian, I would say, yeah, of course, because the texts are not going to perfectly accord. But for some reason, Augustine could not accept this, and so comes up with this ludicrous idea of a literal staff and a metaphorical staff that Jesus is talking about. If you were willing to just say, yes, this is a contradiction, but that doesn't upset the method of Christianity, I think it would be a much more defensible and respectable approach. But instead it seems that you're unwilling to admit that there's even a single contradiction in these texts.
I I am saying that the texts are written from 4 different points of view.
Do they contradict each
And
other?
it is quite possible that on details, Matthew tells you things that are not in Mark or
that's not what-
different
that's
than
not what
Mark.
I'm
Different
asking.
than Mark. Contradict Mark.
Contradict Mark.
Yes, contradict Mark. And so the point is, here's my point. You're acting, I mean, look at it this way. You would be scoring a point if you could say, God wrote 4 books and they contradict each other. Just like if you're able to say, Dinesh said this in the beginning of the debate and that at the end of the debate, Dinesh is contradicting himself. On the other hand, if we have 2 guys who are here today to go and write an account of this debate, right? And then we look at their accounts, which are authentic, first person, I was their accounts with a lot of detail.
Yep.
And one guy says, for example, you know, the lights were dark, the other guy says the lights were dim, or one guy says, for example, that Dinesh was sitting at a 45-degree angle, another guy says it was a 50-degree angle.
Yeah. But
These are
now,
not,
now imagine.
and then
now
someone
I'm-
goes, Dinesh was sitting at a 43.5-degree angle because he thought this was a way of maximizing his rhetorical
Yeah, but
effectiveness with
n-
the audience. People would be like,
Now imagine somebody said, Alex was wearing a blue jacket, and the reason he was wearing a blue jacket, someone said it's a blue jacket, someone else said it's a red jacket. Who cares? You're quite right. But if somebody said specifically, I know that the reason he was wearing a blue jacket was because there's an upcoming election in the UK that's just been announced, and he was trying to represent the Conservative Party. And somebody else said, I know that the reason he was wearing red, and in fact he told us himself that the reason he was wearing red is because he wanted to support Labour in the upcoming general election in his home country.
okay, perfect
You would say,
example.
that is a contradiction and means that one of you wasn't paying close enough attention, not just to the colour of my jacket, but the very message that I was trying to get across.
that could well be true, but what I'm getting
it is
at is
true.
we know, just from normal experience, that if the 2 of us are
Dinesh
sitting in a
is
cafe
losing
and we
very
see an
badly
accident,
here.
these kinds of differences are normal. So let's just say, for example, here's God showing us a revelation, and the revelation can be whatever it is, and you and I write an account of it, and somebody finds that my account of it not only is different than yours, but let's just say, for example, I go, oh, Jesus was wearing a cloak. Another guy goes, he's wearing a robe. For anyone to actually think that this is, in fact, a refutation of the truth of the Bible is ludicrous. So anyway, in our format, we've agreed to do a flip, where you've been asking me questions now. Let me ask you something.
If you've got something to ask.
Let me turn around and ask you questions in a sort of what I think is a more fundamental mode, because it gets to what the Bible really is.
Let's hear it.
Do you think that the universe had a beginning?
Oh, God.
Don't know.
You don't know?
I would suspect yes.
You suspect yes.
Yeah, sure.
How did the writers of the book of Genesis know that?
I have no idea. I mean,
What?
if I'm going to
They
be
guessed?
if I'm going to be cynical about this, if they did guess, it would be a 50-50 guess. And I also think
Yeah.
that if we had
Would it be
scientific,
a 50-50 guess?
yeah, because and it might even be
This-
worse than that
what?
for you, because
Yeah,
if we
of
had
course it'd be a
some kind of
50-50
scientific
Dinesh.
popular hypothesis, because of course the Big Bang might not have been the beginning of everything, who knows, right? But like whatever the popular scientific hypothesis is, if it were pointing to an infinite universe, for example,
man.
as Einstein thought we lived in, then I'm sure that people would open Genesis. They would say that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and say
This
that
is
the earth
incredible.
just means the earth itself, right? Like I think it would be equally easily interpretable on either account.
All right. So, one of my professors at Dartmouth was Robert Jastrow. He headed the Mount Wilson Laboratory, one of the great astronomers of the 20th century. So Jastrow writes in his book God and the Astronomers that for 250 years, modern science has been attempting to discover whether the universe had a beginning. And you can think of these scientists as
No
ascending a
creation
very
myth.
tall
Only-
mountain in which there are many pathways, and for
No
many
creation
years,
myth, only Jesus.
with the steady state hypothesis and so on, there were beliefs that the universe was eternal, it never had a beginning. In fact, that was the prevailing point of view. And then Jastrow argues it's almost as if we reached the top of the mountain and there was a bunch of Hebrew prophets or theologians sitting there who had been there from the beginning. So I'm describing now a skeptic, a true skeptic and a true scientist describing the scientific shock that attends to a discovery that, and I think it is out of the spirit of that discovery for you to go, oh yeah, I mean, it could have been this. It's like tossing a coin. It isn't like tossing a coin. This is a question that's been argued for 2 centuries and only resolved in the last several decades. and resolve decisively in one side and the other. And the fact that you're
Yeah, it's
not
a
willing to just
50-50
straight out
guess,
say,
ding
yeah,
dong.
it is actually an astounding fact that we now know.
No. I mean, look, the scientific method has also revealed to us that the Earth was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. That is much later than the Sun. The Old Testament account, the Hebrew Bible account, tells us that it was the other way around. So it got that bit wrong.
All right. So we're, yes, the Bible is not.
So sometimes it gets things right.
No.
Sometimes it gets things wrong. You know.
The Bible is not
It's
a
not that
science.
astounding to
It's
me.
not listing out a scientific.
Well, now hold on a second. You can't now move the goalpost, especially if you're still gonna miss.
The issue. The issue of the origin of the universe is extremely critical.
You just told me that Genesis predicted, or knew about, or somehow knew about the scientific hypothesis of the origin of the universe. Then, when I pointed out another scientific observation that doesn't accord with Genesis, you tell me that Genesis isn't a scientific text to begin with.
Well, if you read Genesis, it is making a astounding claim, which pertains to God. Obviously, God created the heavens and the earth.
Is it making a scientific claim or not? Is it telling us how the universe scientifically formed or not?
It's not telling us how the universe scientifically formed, because if it did, they would be outlining the history of the Big Bang.
Then what's the relevance of bringing this up in the first place?
Because it is stating a conclusion, not a process. It's not telling you how the universe was formed.
Right.
It's not telling you about...
It also doesn't tell us how the sun was formed, but it tells us that it was formed after the earth was. It tells us that's the case. That's wrong. It's incorrect.
Show me.
Oh, I don't have a Bible.
Okay. Well, I've read that passage maybe a dozen times. I have never spotted this contradiction that you're describing. But I'll go back and look at it again. But again,
on what day is it that God makes the sun?
I'm not gonna lie, this is extraordinarily funny. Holy shit, dude. I can't, man. That's too funny. What Alex did was incredible. Yeah, no. What's incredible is he was able to ascertain Dinesh's level of stupidity, and he delved right in and just Kali Mod out its still beating heart of dumbassery.
Day 4, I think it's day 3 or day 4, something around there.
You're right, but
when's
the
light
mainstream
created?
of the Christian tradition does.
When's the
It
heaven and
obviously
the earth
can't
created?
be day 4 because the concept of day in the original Hebrew doesn't mean day.
Sure, but day 4 comes after day 1, right?
Well, it's describing obviously epochs or periods.
Yeah,
yes.
so actually it's much worse, because now the sun is created much later than the earth was.
Well, not necessarily.
Oh my god.
Well, show me.
I don't know. I mean, we can.
Oh, okay.
We can read.
Oh my god. Oh my god, dude. Oh my god. Stop, Alex. He's already dead. Stop. Dinesh is so taken aback by this. Dinesh is so taken aback by this. He can't believe it. He's literally asking, please show me. I just, where does it say that the sun? Oh, I was attributing biblical truth to the Big Bang. Remember how my entire opening statement was how the Bible is metaphorical, like, you know, Shakespeare? You know, it's Anyway, the Bible showed the Big Bang. Incredible stuff. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's the killing blow we just saw. Everything after this is just excessive. Everything after this is just going to basically be like, I don't know. Goku after Krillin was killed. Just manhandling Frieza.
Read through that. We can find Genesis.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that would be the best use of our time. I mean, we can do it if you really want to. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, it's not astonishing.
Let's move on.
Yeah,
why not?
please,
it's not
please.
astonishing to
Yeah,
me that
Dinesh,
like if
you're already gone.
if you're
bud.
making claims about the origin of the universe, especially in the case where if it is making a specific claim in the knowledge that there's a sort of infinite hypothesis and a beginning hypothesis, to take a 50-50 stab, it's not amazing to me. It would be more amazing to me if everything lined up and it gave us an otherwise unknowable historical scientific account of the beginning of the universe. But as you say, that's not even what Genesis is trying to do. So I don't. In other words, I don't understand how.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Genesis is trying to unfurl a. I'm saying that Genesis is making a statement about creation, and the statement about creation has a very startling scientific implication. Because if there was a creation, then there obviously wasn't something, and then there was something.
But I mean, it's not just science which can tell us that the universe had a beginning. I mean, like, there are lots of philosophical arguments that people have made. Perhaps most famously, Al-Ghazali, who argues against for the impossibility of a past infinite universe, and I think does so quite convincingly, with no reference to redshifting and no reference to scientific hypotheses. So it's perfectly possible for somebody to take a pretty studious and educated guess at the fact that the universe had a beginning long before the scientific method told us that that was the case.
I'm not saying that it's not possible to make philosophical arguments, and of course, as you know, there was a tradition in ancient Greece of making philosophical arguments all over the place.
So maybe that's why
let me give you.
Oh wow!
It's my time.
I don't think Alex knew about that.
I'm trying to answer your question. Maybe if you ask me how would they know, isn't this astounding? I would say, well, maybe they just had a philosophical tradition that taught a beginning of the universe, and that's where they got it from.
Except that
it's not inconceivable.
It's not inconceivable, but it's not likely, because when we think of the tradition of Western civilization, we speak of Athens and Jerusalem. We speak of the origins of philosophy starting in about the 8th century BCE, and then really developing first in Greece. And then we talk about the tradition of revelation developing in ancient Jerusalem. Yep. So was there a hidden philosophical tradition? Possible, but probably unlikely. Let's proceed to let's proceed to the issue of the veracity of some of the historical events described in the Bible. Would you say that figures like Jeremiah, David, are these historical figures or mythological figures?
I don't know for certain, but I would say that the Bible is certainly attempting to paint them as historical figures.
Forget what it's attempting to do. You've been trying to.
So I don't know. But
you don't know. You have no idea.
I'm happy to say yes.
Okay. So on a.
I would predict yes. I would say yes.
You would say
yes. What I would imagine. Yeah.
Everything after this is going to be disgusting.
Do you think that Sodom and Gomorrah are historical cities?
Probably, yeah.
Probably yes. Yeah. Would you say that Pontius Pilate was a real person?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Would you say that? All right. Now, these statements that you're saying now were in no way known to be true until recent decades. And
some of those, I'm not sure.
All the ones I mentioned.
If you're talking about like archaeology,
I'm talking biblical archaeology. Let me give you an example of what we're talking about.
Archaeology can't prove the historical existence of a person very easily.
Well, let me go into this a little bit here.
And also, I want to make sure we're using the time wisely here. You could give me a sound archaeological bit of evidence that all of these people existed that in no way tells us about the truth of the stories that are attributed to them.
No, it does. Well, let me put it this way. For many centuries, this is a whole tradition of biblical scholarship in the 19th century. In fact, really until in some cases 10, 15, or 20 years ago, there was absolutely no evidence historically for the existence, for example, of a Hezekiah, Jeremiah, David, let alone actual locations for David's palace.
Sure.
Hezekiah's tomb. All right. Hezekiah's
his tunnels.
Tunnels. Now, let me tell you something I discovered. I was getting a tour recently, a few months ago, in Israel from the guys at Hebrew University, and they were talking about an archaeologist named Eliot Mazar, who's what she calls herself a biblical archaeologist. She's not a Christian or even a believer, but the way that she does archaeology is this. She has the Bible in one hand and the pickaxe in the other. And the approach to it is pretty simple. It is, I want to find David's palace. Now, no one has ever heard of David's palace is in the Bible, but there's no independent corroboration of it at all. There's a foundation in Jerusalem called the City of David Foundation. They have a little office. Dr. Elliot Mazar walks in their office and says to them, you have to move your office because the Palace of David is in the ground underneath your office. And these guys are like, how would you know that? And Dr. Mazar says, because if you read the Bible, it will tell you that David, when he built his palace, brought in Phoenician builders who brought materials from Phoenicia and also brought Phoenician building expertise. The Phoenicians were apparently the builders of the day. And so Dr. Mazar says, we have found Phoenician seals, Phoenician coins, Phoenician inscriptions here. And so I predict that the palace is right underneath here because the Bible tells me that that's how that palace was built. So
David's palace exists?
David's palace is there for you to see today.
Okay.
And it is in the exact location of where it was said to be. And what I'm getting at is the archaeological approach here is to use the Bible as an archaeological tool. The location of Sodom and Gomorrah. There was a lot of speculation that said Sodom and Gomorrah were cities over here or cities over there, but actually it makes no sense because A, what we know about Sodom and Gomorrah is that they were once flourishing cities. 2, they were burned to ashes. 3, Abraham supposedly could see the smoke from a long ways away. And so these locations of Sodom and Gomorrah were never found until recently. By recent, I mean recent decades. An archaeologist, again in the Elliot Mazar tradition, takes the Bible and says, for Sodom and Gomorrah to exist, it's not enough to just go looking and see if we find stuff and go, hey, is this Sodom and Gomorrah? Let's actually follow the tracks of the Bible. Let's follow the map provided admittedly in very sketchy terms. The Bible is not trying to give you a map, but it's giving you clues. And based on these clues, the actual Sodom and Gomorrah is located, and you dig into it, and guess what? You find the remains of an ancient city, and you also find ash and debris. In other words, there was an ancient city there. It was completely burned to the ground. So one of the great cities of the ancient world then becomes an absolute nothing, and has been an absolute nothing since. And not only does the Bible describe these events, but it says exactly that. That these great cities will cease to exist and will never be resurrected again as they have not been to this day.
If I may, because I'm beginning to suspect this isn't a question, I might just jump in here. Sure, yeah, okay, so the authors of the Hebrew Bible.
My conclusion.
So if I might answer the question. I mean, it is your time, but I need to be able to speak as well. The Bible contains accurate data about where archaeologically we can find the ruins of ancient cities. Okay, that's not too extraordinary to me. I have no problem saying that the people who wrote these texts knew where these places were with exact precision. And in fact, notice what's happening. Notice what's happening, in my view. What's happening is that the Bible is a historical text and a scientific text when it needs to be, and it's not one when you don't want it to be. So when I said a moment ago, here's a relatively mundane historical fact about the Gospels, you said, well, the fact that some mundane historical fact
can one-hit kill me? That's ridiculous.
Christianity is ludicrous. But now you're telling me that a mundane historical fact is enough to buttress Christianity. I don't think you can have your cake and eat it too in that case.
I'm not trying to have my cake and eat it too. I'm simply saying that if somebody gives a true account of events, complete with small details that are incidental to the narrative. The Bible refers to very minor figures at times. Let's take, for example, Caiaphas. Caiaphas is one of the 2 high priests who is present at Jesus' trial. We don't even know his first name. He's mentioned as Caiaphas. The historian Josephus calls him Josephus Caiaphas. And that is the only indication from Josephus, and only one source, and a source writing a little later, of what this guy's name even was. And until recently, a few decades ago, there was absolutely no corroboration that there was ever a guy even named Caiaphas. Except now, not only do we have inscriptions with his name, we actually have his bones.
But Dinesh, what does this matter?
Okay, so what I'm getting at
what does this matter at all to the question?
Why does it matter?
Why does this matter?
Because if somebody is giving a true account of events, you know, a guy comes running into this room and he goes, guess what? I've just witnessed a murder. He's going to give us a lot of accounts, and a lot of detail.
Why
right?
are there
Now,
demi-humans
Look,
and
if
lizards
somebody
at
was
the
trying
same
to claim
time?
that Moses parted the Red Sea, and I said, well, how could you possibly know that's the case?
Because the demi-humans used to live alongside humans, and there used to be an alliance between the astrologians and the demi-humans. And in fact, to this day, there's like a tendency in Raya Lucaria to study magic alongside demi-humans, and it is implied via placement here that one of the more heretical sects of Raya Lucaria delved into the primeval current via demi-human magic. Yeah. You fool, you forgot about the leprechauns betraying the mermaids, setting off the 7 Years' War. Of course.
And you said, well, look, we didn't have any evidence that a guy called Moses existed, but we've discovered this rock where someone wrote Moses was here.
No.
Great,
no,
okay, we
no,
know,
no, no, no,
we
no,
know
no.
Moses existed, and maybe we know where he existed, but the actual events, the stories
would
that are
that be
attributed to these
inconvenient for
characters are in no
narrative,
way
Dinesh?
supported by anything that you're saying. And that's
Okay.
the important thing. I think that's what people are interested in. I doubt that anybody in this room, and they can make themselves known if they're here, I don't think anybody in this room either thinks that it's important or would be, is troubled in their skepticism by the existence of these people
Oh my
and the real
God.
existence of the places that are described in the Old Testament.
Right, and
I don't-
neither do I think
Jesus.
anybody, neither do I think that a single Christian believer in the world would be shaken by anything that you've said today. So let's really try to meet in the middle on the stuff that really matters. And I think what we're really saying, when you mentioned the parting of the Red Sea, to me, it's like, now we're talking. Because we're talking about...
These are different.
These are categorically different types of
no,
events.
I mean what you just said, these are different because people are troubled by what I say and they're not troubled by what you say. Because for an atheist to say that Hezekiah existed doesn't mean they can't be an atheist. For a Christian to say that Jesus didn't historically rise from the dead means that they're not a Christian.
Correct.
So these are different, they're asymmetrical.
They're asymmetrical, so let's pick up the...
So it matters when the historical elements are wrong in terms of our grand conclusion. For the Christian, it matters when the history gets it wrong. For the atheist, it doesn't matter when the history gets it right.
What I'm saying is that if someone gives a true account of events, it is normal for the accounts to vary, to differ, in some cases to have minor contradictions. Sure. The real question is did the thing that's being described actually happen?
Okay, so
let's turn to that.
Do you think, for example, that the slaughter of the Amalekites that I mentioned before actually happened?
Probably, of course.
And if that happened, I mean, we haven't spoken about the concept of moral truth. I'd like to get the time to do so.
We can come to that, but let's stay with what I think you were about to get to, which I think is the heart of the matter that we haven't even gotten to, and that's this. The Bible is where the Bible is the most unbelievable is in its account of astounding and miraculous events.
Sure.
Right? Healings. Let's take the most outrageous event of all, which is, let's just say, bringing a guy back from the dead.
Yeah.
Presented in the Bible as a miracle.
You're talking about Lazarus here, rather than
I'm talking
Jesus.
here about Lazarus. Yes, Lazarus. Perfect. Now, for a Christian would say this: A, the Bible doesn't try to prove it, it simply asserts it. In fact, it presents it as a truth of revelation, if you will. God revealed this. It's a miracle, which is to say that it is not something that happens within the seeming known laws of nature, which we'll talk about in a moment. And the question really here is, are these kinds of miracles possible? If you say, are they implausible, or are they rare, or is it difficult to believe, the Christian is like right with you.
I think the question is, did they happen?
Did they happen, right? And here's where the Christian and the atheist are on common ground, because the Christian and the atheist would both say that based upon ordinary experience, it can't happen, because otherwise it wouldn't be a miracle.
So what evidence might we have to suggest that these miraculous events as described in the Gospels did happen?
I'm saying that because the miraculous events, the Christian would simply say, if God exists, miracles are obviously possible.
Sure, I agree.
The atheist has a higher burden, and that is the atheist has to say that whether or not God exists, which is not the topic of our debate here, miracles are impossible. Because if they're possible...
They don't have to say that.
You don't have to say that?
No, of course I don't have to say that.
You don't have to say that. You say it is possible for a man to be raised from the dead.
I can say that that's possible without thereby...
Without saying, but you're saying, but
Without
this
thereby-
particular one didn't happen.
Got it.
But the event is possible.
Without thereby in any way telling
Get
us
outta here,
anything about whether it
demi-human
happened as
Maggie.
reported to
Is
us.
it possible is it possible for the Red Sea to be parted?
Sure, why not?
It
Yeah,
is.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean,
Is
I'll
it
say-
possible
I'll say
for
yes,
a...
But what does that do for us? Is it possible that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse?
Okay, so here's our problem. then.
Well, hold on. Yes or no? Is it-
Yes, of course it's possible.
Of course it's possible. So that means that, the miraculous events as described in Islam, you've got such a higher burden of proof than the Muslim does if you're having a debate with a Muslim.
But
because you have to say that's impossible.
I am not trying to prove the veracity of this or that miracle. I freely admit that I
And
can't do
I'm
that.
not trying to prove the veracity of this
But
or
you
that
can't
miracle.
disprove it either.
No, of course I can't disprove it.
Exactly.
But that's
So-
not my task yet. That's like me saying, I think that, I don't know, to take a Shakespearean example, I think that, spoiler alert,
Well, we don't need a Shakespearean example.
Romeo took the poison.
Let's take an actual.
And if you said, well, hold on, how do you know that that actually happened? And I said, well, you can't prove that it didn't.
Well, let's pick an actual example that pertains to Christianity. Let's talk about something I raised earlier.
We've got about 5 minutes before Q&A,
Okay.
by the
Do
way.
you believe that there is life after death?
I don't know.
You don't have no idea.
Yeah, I'm agnostic on that.
So if I say that there's life after death, am I being unreasonable?
I don't think so.
Not at all.
It depends on your reasons.
It depends on my reasons, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is if I were to tell you that there is no empirical way
Yeah.
to prove this one way or the other, my faith, let's say, that there's life after death is just as reasonable as someone who says there isn't.
Sure, it depends on what the reasons that are given are, of course, but sure, that's...
We're talking about the reasons that are actually available, not... The person who's giving a reason may give the best or not
No, look,
the best reason.
it's pedantic, but I'm happy to say yes. I just want to be careful what I say because
I'm
people might get the
happy
wrong impression
to
of my
agree with you.
beliefs. But yeah, sure. I mean, sure. We've got two people. One says life after death. One says not. They're both just as reasonable as each
They're
other.
both just as reasonable.
Sure. Yeah, that could be.
Okay,
That could be the
excellent.
case.
Okay, good. I wanted to clarify that point particularly because
What's
what
this
it
got
really...
to do with the truth of the Bible?
Well, all I am saying is that the claims of miracles, you and I are not going to be in a position to go back and see whether or not Jesus raised a man from the dead,
Well,
right?
it's not all you say. It's not all you're saying.
The
because
Christian is perfectly willing to take that on faith.
you think that did happen, and you're taking it on faith, and that's fine. Like,
Yes.
more power to you. And in fact, I envy your ability to believe things despite what
Well,
seems to
don't
me
you
like
take
a-
a
I
lot of
envy
things on
your
faith?
simple
yeah, absolutely.
mind.
Plenty of things on
Yeah,
faith.
well, yeah, all the time.
So all
time.
the things that you take on faith
Yeah.
are things that you think are not unreasonable, but the things that Christians take on faith are to you unreasonable because they can't be corroborated with historical evidence.
Is that what I said? I don't remember saying that.
So are the Christian beliefs on faith just as reasonable as everything that you believe on
It
faith?
can be depending on the reasons, but the veracity of the gospel accounts and the Old Testament prophecy, I
Hey,
think,
Amber Brains.
is unreasonable to believe in.
I'm glad
Not
you're
life after
recovering
death.
well
That's
from
fine. you
your
can believe
vein
that.
procedure.
Not like a man called Jesus rose from the
I'm
dead.
sorry that it's bad,
Fine.
though.
But the idea that the Bible comports with reality either in mythological sense, in an allegorical sense, in a moral sense, or in a in the sense of historicity.
Let's talk about the moral sense, since you raised it, and
Fine.
we'll just talk about
I want to make
briefly
sure we've
and
got
go to...
time for Q&A. But look, I can reread the text if you like. The Amalekites.
Well, let's not talk about the Amalekites, in part because
Well,
here's
yeah,
the
let's
problem.
not.
For
Yeah,
most
definitely. You don't
Christians,
want to talk about the
the
Amalekites,
Old
man.
Testament is different than the New and is seen through the light
Oh,
of the New.
come
So
on,
I'm not,
dude.
you know,
God
if
is
you
the
want to,
same.
if you want to go to, Dennis Prager, who has written about this from a Jewish perspective, has written about the Deuteronomy, the Book of Kings, the Amalekites.
Sure, we
yeah,
can
notice-
bring him out
What he
later.
considers to be the
scholar Dennis
justifiable
Prager.
massacre of the Canaanites. I don't really want to go there because.
Well, I know why you don't want to go there.
Well,
because
the
it's
reason I
under-
don't want to
Hey,
go there,
Luis,
the Old
our
Testament is
dollar.
is full of horrific massacres.
Love Alex's
Yes,
work.
and
Alex
that
is
is-
so
that is-
great.
hold
in
on.
this
massacres
debate.
which
Holy
are
moly.
ordained.
Massacres which appear to be ordained
Also, all of
by
you should
Yahweh
subscribe to Cosmic
directly.
Skeptic. That
Agreed.
kinda goes without
And
Well,
which
why
are
are you
which
saying
are
Yahweh instead of God? Why are you
because-
trying to distance yourself from the God of the Old Testament?
well, I'm not trying to distance myself. I'm simply trying to say
that's
that
what it
any
seems like,
reader,
right?
So why is that the first time you've used the word Yahweh in this
because
conversation?
I'll tell you why. Because there is a movement within the Bible itself
That's so
that
curious.
that you are completely missing.
Do not think that I have come to
Hold on, hold on,
abolish
hold
the
on.
law
Let me-
or the
let me-
prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
I just have to say, man, as someone who grew up in the evangelical church, like, I love watching Alex debate and point out these inconsistencies, because they were I had a lot of questions along these same lines that people just couldn't answer for me.
Jesus said that in the Sermon on the Mount, referring to his fulfillment
So far,
of Old
only
Testament
Alex has
prophecy
read from the
and
Bible
law.
directly.
Referring to
Yeah.
his fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy.
Old
Look,
Testament law. And what I'm referring to here is an Old Testament law, which
almost
you're now
like
trying to
he's the only
distance
one who
yourself
knows
and say
what
that
he's
it's sort of
I'm
different to the New
saying-
Testament.
I'm saying that you're
That's not
mis-
what Jesus thought.
I'm saying you're missing you're missing the developmental track of the Bible that is obvious to any intelligent reader. Let me give you one example of what I'm talking about.
Tell me about the Amalekites. Tell me what the developmental
It's not about the
trajectory
Amalekites.
of this
It's about the
genocide
way that the
is.
whole story of the Bible changes in tone and mood and message.
But
I mean, for example,
help me out here. Like, just tell me where, any way you like. Tell me where this fits into that trajectory.
Okay, I'll
me
tell you
this
where.
fits in.
We have just a couple minutes, guys, so let's wrap it up before the Q&A.
Just tell me.
the
just tell me where this
the
fits in.
underlying message of the Old Testament is an eye for an eye. The Amalekites are the enemies of the Israelites. The Israelites will crush them with the same venom that the Amalekites would have crushed the Israelites. That's called an eye for an eye.
Including
now,
the
hold
children,
on, hold on.
The children, the infants,
The children,
the
the
cattle,
infants,
the sheep, the camels, the donkeys.
Yeah, that Dennis Prager says yes, but my point is different. You will not find that
Just
spirit
exploited.
It's not
at
enough,
all in the New Testament. In fact, in the New Testament, you've got a spirit of forgiveness. So what I'm getting at is to pretend
probably
like
do
you
with some
don't
forgiveness
have
after
this.
that. I mean, seriously.
Christianity is named after Christ. It's based on Christ as a fulfillment of the Old
I
Testament.
think he's
But
got.
what does fulfillment
He's gonna
mean?
kill Dinesh
It
on this
actually
question.
means
Dinesh
transcendence.
might actually die.
In Abraham's time, blood sacrifices are normal, right?
That can't
When
be right,
Christ
Dinesh.
comes as a sacrifice, Christ is the lamb. The point is, those blood sacrifices aren't
that can't be
necessary
right.
anymore.
Listen,
That's the Christian reading, and you keep filibustering me because you know that the Bible is showing a movement
Alex is losing
in a
his
direction,
composure in a
and to
positive
miss
way.
the movement is to miss the Bible. Let's look at
I'm-
God
no,
in the
no,
Bible.
Hold on,
Let me
hold
make
on.
one quick
no,
point
no,
about
well,
God in the
there's
Bible.
nothing quick about what you're doing, Dinesh. There's nothing quick about what you're doing. I need to be allowed to respond to what you're saying. I'm getting sick whenever
You're
I have these
cross-examining me on the justice of smiting the Amalekites. Honestly, I don't see any justice in it, but I do agree that that was the eye for an eye ethic
Eye
of the
for an
Old
eye.
Testament that is repudiated and transformed and transfigured in the New.
I've had this conversation so many times, most recently with William Lane Craig. At least he had the gall to just tell me that yes, that was a moral thing for God to do. I get sick to death of people hand-waving away this genocide by some vague reference to the fact that Jesus came along to do something which somehow kind of undoes the immorality of it. Like, this is not an eye for an eye. This is a genocide of combatant men, innocent women, and children, and animals. Saul is punished by God for not killing all of the animals. Like,
That is actually a ludicrous misreading of what's happening.
Let me just
with
make
Saul
a.
and David.
Let me just make a quick point.
let me
just
check
make a
in
quick
just-
point. I have to make this point.
Okay.
I've got to read the text from Joshua as well.
Okay, and then we'll check in with the audience because we're probably. I think the audience is going to agree that we want this to keep going
No, that's fine. If
instead
we
of
wanna
going to
go to Q&A,
Q&A.
that's
But we'll
fine.
check
That's
in
fine.
just after Alex's point here.
I think it's important, like, read these texts for yourself. There is no way that I'm misreading this text. We know that this is what's happening. In the slaughter of Ai, that's a type of Canaanite. In Joshua, we're told that when Israel had finished killing all of the men in Ai, in the fields and in the wilderness, where they had chased them, and when every one of them had been put to the sword, the Israelites returned to Ai and killed those who were in it. That is to say, that we're told that this is just because the promised land was inhabited, and God's God, he's allowed to do this. So because the Israelites want that land, they have to go and chase out the Ai. So they chase them into the wilderness. They chase after them. They slaughter them in the wilderness. They then turn around, come back into the city, and kill who's left. Who's left if the combatants have run away? The women and the children.
Yeah.
This is intolerable, and I cannot have it
Well, hold on,
simply,
hold on. I mean,
simply waved away.
why is he
All right,
laughing?
hang on.
Jesus.
Let me just for a second.
It can't happen. It can't keep happening.
Let's pause for.
You're completely blind to the irony of what you're saying.
Dinesh, can we pause for just a second?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone who wants to go to Q&A right now, make a loud noise. Everyone who wants the discussion to continue on and eat up the Q&A time, cheer.
Let him,
Okay, sorry guys, we're gonna let them roll through Q&A.
let's
All right.
see what we say. We might have some time.
Christianity invented the just war tradition, according to which the slaughter of women and children is out of bounds. Prior to Christianity, no one thought this. Everybody did it, and everybody today does it everywhere in the world, and we do it too. The bombing of Dresden, the bombing of Hamburg, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The
Yeah, but no
incineration
one's
of women and
claiming
children
that
is the normal course of war. I just watched
No
a World War
one's
II documentary
that
in
is
which
the
they interview
case.
an old bomber,
They're
a U.S.
pointing out that
bomber
God
pilot,
ordering such a thing
and
is
he goes,
horrific.
I was given a bombing mission to hit a target. I asked the U.S. authorities, who's in the building? They said 20,000 women and children. And this guy kind of breaks down. You can watch this on Netflix. And he goes, I'm like, what the hell? You want me to kill 20,000 women and children? He goes, we're supposed to be the good guys? And he goes, but I couldn't repudiate the order. It was an order, so I did it. So what I'm getting at is
that everybody does it.
It
So
is.
What? The point is, everyone does it. What? Dinesh, what are you doing?
Not ethical, it is not, but I'm simply saying, Alex, that you are a product of the Christian morality that repudiates it now. You're standing on a Christian mountain and acting like, whoa, look at these Christians. They taught you to talk like this.
These people did not teach me to think like that.
They did.
These people were listening to their God who was telling them to slaughter innocent women
That's
and
right.
children.
The ancient Israelites were, but the ancient Israelites are not what taught you. What taught you is what taught you is the 1,000-year tradition of the early Christian church
that was built on
which
this.
came a bit too late for the Amalekites.
It came a bit too late for the Amalekites, to be sure.
Were the Israelite armies not instructed by the God that you believe in?
They were instructed by God.
And they were instructed to do things which you would now consider to be immoral, yes?
Absolutely.
So God has commanded them to do something which you now consider to be immoral, whether or not you
Hold
consider
on.
it to be immoral
Hold
because
on.
of the later developments of Christian ethics. God Himself has told us that we must abandon our intuition that the slaughter of women and children, and by the way, when it's unnecessary in those instances to slaughter them, is wrong.
I don't view it that way. This is how I view it. Let's put it this way.
Clearly you
Even
don't
in the
view it
ancient
that way.
world, divine revelation comes into a primitive, barbaric world, which is full of a lot of really bad guys.
and God says, keep going.
No,
Keep it up. You're
God
doing
does not.
such a
God
good
does
job.
not. God does not say keep going. But what God does is and again, this is called trying to get the point of what is happening. There's slavery in this world, in the ancient world, and it is true. The Bible doesn't come in and go, we denounce slavery, we denounce the killing of women and children. It doesn't do that.
The opposite.
It actually immerses itself into an existing, admittedly barbaric culture. And what's actually going on there with the Amalekites, the Canaanites, and so on, if you just read the Old Testament, it tells you. It has to do with the displacement of polytheism with monotheism.
Oh, that's fine.
Hold on.
That justifies the murder of
I didn't say
children
it
and
does.
women.
I didn't say it does.
That's what you're implying.
I'm saying
Otherwise
that
you
the
wouldn't
way
be
it
talking about
happens historically is God takes a side. The single monotheistic God, who, by the way, in the Old Testament does not act like a monotheistic God. He acts like a tribal God, right? He acts like the God of only the Israelites. And so Israel's enemies.
Listen to what you
Come
just
on.
said. The
Are you
God
serious?
that you believe in is acting like a
I fell for
tribal
the same
war god.
goddamn thing.
The God of the the God that is depicted in the Old Testament is he goes, I'm picking the Jews. I'm choosing you.
To the extent that
all
your
good.
male,
And your
you're saying-
enemies become my enemies,
to the extent
right?
that your male and female slaves may come from the nations around you, from them you may buy and sell slaves. You may also purchase some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clan born in your town. You can bequeath them to your children as inheritable property. This is human beings, by the way.
And
but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. So not only do we have, the description of slavery in the Old Testament, we have an explicit condoning, instructions on how to do it, and doing it based on race.
Well, I wouldn't say based on race
Well,
because
how else do you interpret-
first of
how-
all,
how else do you-
racism is an invention of the modern
Tribe.
world.
Call it tribe if you like.
Right.
Ethnicity.
These are clans.
You treat,
these
you
are
treat
militaristic
Israelite
clans.
slaves this way, and you treat
Sure.
non-Israelite slaves this way. By the way that the Israelite slaves are treated, we're told in Exodus 21, if you have a male slave, they're to go free after 7 years. But if you give them a wife and they have children while they're your property, then they don't go free after 7 years, only the man does. And Exodus 21 says, but if the man decides that he loves his wife and his children and his master and wants to stay, then he can say to his master he wants to stay, at which point he's taken outside, his ear is pierced like cattle, and he becomes a slave for life. Now, by the way, female slaves aren't let go after 7 years at all in the first place. Now, I understand what you're saying when you say, hold on, when you say, like, okay, maybe God couldn't have abolished slavery for some reason, but at least, for example, when the male slave goes free, let his wife and children go with him.
Yeah.
Why not this simple moral improvement? There is no conceivable reason that this could not have been ordained by God, but
Look,
it was not.
You have a capital argument here to be had with the rabbis, and look, there is a massive
it's-
rabbinical tradition
it is
that
a
discusses
part of
every
your
fine point, as you
religion,
know.
dog.
Yeah, but it's not my job to
I'm not a rabbi either.
isolate the Old Testament from the New and justify ancient battles that have no bearing. Let me put it this way:
And tell me how
if
specifically
if
the New
someone were to
Testament
listen to
undoes
you,
this.
they would have no idea that the first anti-slavery movement in the world is
none of this
driven
has
by the
anything to
Quakers
do
and the
with what you
evangelical
guys are talking
Christians.
about.
They read the same Bible, but evidently they don't read it your way. Because if they read it your way, they would be the prime apologists and defenders of slavery. So
Dinesh.
you have to explain why you take a universal institution.
Dinesh, when did that happen?
In every culture.
When did that happen?
When did what happen?
When did that movement first get off the ground?
It's in America, it starts shortly after the Quakers get here. So the early let's put it this way, the early anti-slavery movements are about 1710,
So
1720.
here's two hypotheses then. One hypothesis is that God actually didn't like slavery the whole time. It just took human beings literally thousands of years to work it out, and that just so happened to coincide with the Enlightenment. That's one hypothesis. Another
Well, I
hypothesis,
mean,
another hypothesis is actually that the Bible does condone slavery, and that what's going on is, I think, for example, when you look at the actual verses that are being given as justification for the Christian abolitionist movement, what kind of verses are we talking about?
Well, what I'm saying is that first of all, the
Like, it may have been
Enlightenment,
Christians who did it, but they weren't. Like, to say that they were doing it as motivated by Christianity is a different kind of claim.
it is a very significant claim because to you, the Bible exists in an interpretive tradition that has been expostulated over many centuries
Controller
by
of batteries.
Christians. They're reading that Bible. They're reading it with great care as to what it's trying to say. And the Enlightenment, far from being the origin of any of this, in fact, the racism that came out of the Enlightenment was of a species that never existed before. I mean, you think of the great philosophers like Hegel, Kant, their denunciations of blacks, for example, you'll find nothing like that in the Old Testament, leave alone the New.
And if modern Enlightenment thinkers were beholden to think that these Enlightenment thinkers were ineffable, creators of an inviolable ethic, then we'd probably have had a harder time getting rid of it, don't you think?
Well, nobody.
Do you think the abolitionist movement was helped or hindered by the existence of the verses that I've just described?
Well, I mean,
come on.
I think it was hindered by them because I think that the Southern apologists of slavery appealed to those verses. To be sure, they appealed to the Old Testament verses
And
that were pro-slavery.
tell me where you could appeal to be anti-slavery specifically. I mean, not love your enemy, love your neighbor. Tell me specifically. Like, here's how I can put it: you're in a time machine. You go back to antebellum slavery in the American South.
Yeah.
And you find yourself on a plantation, and you say to the master of the house, you own a bunch of slaves. I don't think this is moral. I don't think you should be mistreating them. Where do they turn? And plausibly so, to justify what they're doing.
Well, the answer
They pull out
is
their
this.
Bible, and you can say to them, well, hold on, have you read this verse? Tell me the verse. Tell me where I can point this person in order to dispel them of their
So I
ideas
would
about
recommend to you a compendium of sermons that were delivered by Northern preachers in the decades leading up to the Civil War. Hold on.
I want to know what the verses
Right,
are.
so
in the
I'm
Bible.
going to give you their mode of preaching because the key to it is to understand how they use the Bible. It's not the way you do it. even the southern theologians weren't dumb enough to say they enslaved the Amalekites, therefore you can enslave this guy who's here from the Congo. No, the southerners didn't use those arguments either. Your arguments are in a different species altogether. If you look at the arguments between the northerners and southerners over slavery, they were far more nuanced than that. Basically, you had to do something like this. The northern theologians would say this: are we or are we not created equal in the eyes of God? Yes or no? Yes. Are we all equally in need of salvation? Yes. Does God therefore love us all equally and make salvation available to us all? Yes.
And then you flip over
and
the Old
all
Testament.
that being the case, so hold on. It takes a movement now to go
too
from this
vague.
theological truth to a political application. But I don't have to prove that this is plausible because it already happened.
It's far too vague. It's
It's
far
far
too
too vague for you. It's far
no.
from a
This-
skeptical compass. It's vague.
This always happens. This
But
always
h- but-
happens.
Again, all Alex did was ask him a question, and it broke him, dude. It broke him so hard. It broke him so hard.
But I'm saying millions of people believed it.
This always
they
happens.
listened to these sermons. They acted on them.
That's because people retrospectively impart their own values.
Why
onto
do
the
you
Bible.
think? Why do you think people in the North who had no stake in the matter signed up to fight the Civil War? Why did they do it?
I don't know. I
You have no
there could be
idea,
lots of
right?
different
You have no
reasons.
clue.
But I
And
don't think it's because they read the Bible. I
I'm
don't think
saying
it
that
can
they.
be. I don't think it
Do
can
you
be because they read
realize
the Bible.
to what
Look at
degree-
look at the sermons that are being given. Look at the language that's being used. People talk about the Exodus story, for example. You know, the enslaved in Egypt, freed by God and brought into the Promised Land. And this is a story that is favored. This is a story that's favored by abolitionists to say, look at this anti-slavery spirit of something like Exodus, leaving out the fact that when the Israelites are liberated from Egypt and trying to take the Promised Land, they do so by slaughtering, genociding, and also then enslaving the people who were already living there. They leave out that bit. Because if they kept it in, then we'd realize that God did not have an anti-slavery essence. God had an anti-Israelite oppression sentiment.
Well-
and it's in the Old Testament specifically the Israelites whose oppression he's upset with, and not only fine with the oppression of others, but mandates the oppression of others through the Israelites.
I don't
Okay,
see
and all
Kevin,
I'm saying is that
John Bogardus.
there is a whole tradition that involves millions of slaves, millions of abolitionist preachers, Martin Luther King. None of them, not one of them, reads this story your way.
They just don't mention it. They just don't mention it.
Right, but isn't the significance of a text determined by the reading and use to which it is put? Let's say, for example, there's a story of murder, and everybody who reads that story becomes a wonderful citizen, loves their family, and you're the only guy who goes, oh no, really, guys, you're all misreading the text. It's really about murder, guys. And Martin Luther King goes, no. Slaves for hundreds of years have taken consolation in the Exodus. I mean, go down, Moses, way down to Egypt land and tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. To you, this is gobbledygook, because guess what the Israelites did next? And then Martin Luther King goes,
What did they do next?
well, my point.
Like, what I would say
here's
to
my
Martin Luther
point.
King, if I was trying to make a-
agree about what
what I
I
would-
agree about the description in the Bible.
What I-
I'm simply saying
What-
that I'm
it's
simply
not a
saying that
description, Dinesh.
a
It's not a
Christian
description.
book has got to be understood in the way Christians understand it. And if you come out with a quote, let's just say, for example,
Don't put it in scare quotes. Like, you can say, go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. And if I was trying to make a theological point, I would say, and then do what? What did they do next? Like, don't get me wrong. I am more than happy that Martin Luther King was able to make a theological case for the abolition of slavery. Fine. But I would say that he was
not for the abolition of slavery,
Yeah,
but
then
for
that's
civil
what
rights.
did they do
He was
next?
misreading
Don't
the text.
ask him
Yeah,
that.
you're right.
We
He
have
doesn't
about
know
5
the-
minutes, guys.
Not the other way around. It's like we have to.
He doesn't know how to order a sequence of events. What are you talking about? What on earth has he said during this entire debate that would lead you to believe that he's capable of sticking to a certain order of events?
To ask who's misreading the text, and let's just suppose for a moment that you could point to me, which you still haven't done, to a single verse, even in the New Testament, which tells me that slavery is a bad thing, which, by the way, St. Paul writes in I can't remember which. I wish I could remember which letter it is. But you'll know what I'm talking about, where he writes, "Slaves, be obedient to your masters, not just the good ones, but also to the cruel," or the freward, as the King James has it. It's like, if it were the case that even if you could, which I'd still love for you to do, point to a single verse in the New Testament that tells me that slavery is actually not so good, the fact that so obviously God is okay with it in the Old Testament means that even if you could do that, the best we're left with is that we have a text here which can say one thing on one day and another thing the next.
If you
Yeah, the best you're left with is it points to an inconsistent and capricious God.
don't understand, if you don't read,
I'm sure I bribed more people than that on the way in. So
if you don't read the Bible in
Were people like cheering for him? Because I did not hear any response from the audience.
the way that the Christians do, then I'm trying to understand what is you're essentially a kind of a new interpreter who's saying.
Also, can I just say, okay, look, I don't mean to be like a fashion gay or anything right now, but like, it's been bothering me the entire time. We're in the final stretch. I haven't even said anything about it because I've been so befuddled by his inane attempts at arguing. And I've been playing Elden Ring. But has anyone noticed the ratio of shoe to pant leg? Like the not the ratio. I didn't phrase that right. There is like a good foot of space between the top of his shoes and the bottom of his pants. Okay, it looks like he's wearing incredibly poorly tailored and poorly fitted capris. It's been like this the entire time. It's been like this the entire time, guys. Because like the thing is, right, if you are wearing an outfit like this, you want a cut that shows off the sock, because the sock can like convey like some additional drip, you know. I would even argue that like Alex's pants are coming up too high, but it could also just be like the way his leg is draped. But there's no excuse for us to be seeing Dinesh D'Souza's fucking shin during this debate. Okay? No part of his outfit matches. It's bad. It doesn't have like an intentionality to it. It looks like he just threw on whatever was in his fucking closet. Do not look at the moose knuckle. Fuck. Don't say those words. Now
First of all,
God damn it.
Texts are always open to interpretation, right?
Oh yeah, his shoes don't match his belt. His shoes also don't match his jacket or literally any other color he's wearing. These pants also don't go with this jacket. I'm sorry. And like, I think Alex's outfit has problems too, but like at the end of the day, like I think it's fine. It's fine. I wouldn't have chosen these pants and shoes with this top, but like whatever.
So if I say, for example, the meaning of the Oedipus story is the quest for truth, no matter where that takes you, and that is the meaning of the Sophoclean hero. The Sophoclean.
I mean, I'm sorry. I can't not comment on this. Okay, I can't not comment on this. I can't not.
The meaning of the Oedipus story is the quest for truth, no matter where that takes you. And
I don't think that's the main takeaway from Oedipus, man. I don't think that's the main, when people read Oedipus, I don't think that's the main takeaway. About the search for truth, no matter the cost. Oh, I thought it was about a guy banging his mom. Uh, silly me.
That is, and that
Why by the way, just why veer out of your current lane into that one? I like how bizarre.
is the meaning of the Sophoclean hero. The Sophoclean hero is isolated, Antigone, Oedipus. They hold on to a truth no matter what, however unpleasant, however dangerous. It often takes them to their destruction or their death. And that is the way in which I, let's just say a student of ancient Greek drama, reads this work. And that is the way that the work has always been read. You come along and say, let's just say you're Sigmund Freud, and you go, no, to me, the work really means something to me.
I really wanted to make a very inappropriate joke, but I restrained myself in time, thus preserving my TOS safe channel.
Different. People have a secret lust for their moms, and this is repressed. Now, it's a very interesting interpretation.
Oh my god, dude. You have a finite amount of time left. How are we to I could seriously listen to this back and forth for another like 8 hours. Okay? Like holy moly. We're 2 hours in and this guy is talking about the story of Oedipus and wanting to bang your mom. I all right, sorry.
The way that the work has always been read. You come along and say, let's just say you're Sigmund Freud, and you go, no, to me, the work really means something to me different.
Yeah, because Sigmund Freud was analyzing things through like the lens of sexual dynamics, and he was wrong about a lot of different things, but he was somewhat right in that, you know, analyzing the relationships between people can like flesh out how people are doing now, and that there's actually kind of a way that our brains react that is relatively similar across human beings, and that you can actually learn to like talk about feelings and such. But like most of his ideas have been discredited. But I think it's not because of Freud that nowadays when people read Oedipus, they're like, huh, so this is a play about banging your mom, huh? Weird.
People have a secret lust for their moms. And
I mean, look, I've seen how well different categories are doing on Pornhub, okay? They release their numbers every year, and you know what? A lot of you guys search for MILFs, okay? A lot of you guys search for MILFs, and I know that. And not only do a lot of you search for MILFs, you also search for, like, stepbrother, stepsister shit, and I think that's really gross. Please stop. You know, not the kink shame, but I would really like it if you stopped. Oh, Soraus, we're in the realm of madness.
and this is repressed. Now, it's a very interesting interpretation, but it's sort of like I'm telling you, well, no Christian reads it that way. You're like, but there it is in the text.
Oh man, the way Alex said "fine," you know, he wants more than anything to tell him to shut up. He wants more than anything to just look Dinesh in the eyes and tell him to shut up.
Sometimes, Dinesh, a genocide is just a genocide.
I'm not.
This is why I like Alex. That was good. That was a That was well done. That was well done. Will Dinesh even pick up on the joke? Genuine question.
Not denying the facts as described.
and in this in- no,
it's the wiping out of the Amalekites.
I don't think Dinesh understood the joke or appreciated it.
Yeah,
I mean,
as ordained by the God that you believe in.
as ordered by Yahweh.
So just to ask a direct yes or no question, and appreciate a direct yes or no to this. The God that you believe in is the moral author of the universe. Morally justifiably commanded the slaughter of innocent children and women. Yes or no?
In the Old Testament, yes.
There you have it. So now we've covered historical, metaphorical, allegorical, and now moral truth. And I suppose it can only be up to the audience to decide whether they think that this is true.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think Dinesh has many more cards to play here.
All right, everyone, let's do a big round of applause for Dinesh and Alex. Wow.
Thank you. Sorry about the questions. Sorry. We'll be around afterwards.
No, it's all good. We do have poster printouts for all of you in the lobby, free of charge, and you can all get them signed by Alex and Dinesh. That'll be joining us in the lobby. And everyone on YouTube, thank you so much.
Alex runs a YouTube channel called Cosmic Skeptic that you should all subscribe to. It's very good.
Attack the...
I guess the at of the channel is Cosmic Skeptic. I think he just changed it to Alex O'Connor. But he has a lot of really great convos on his channel. Y'all go give him a subscribe, okay? I think also he's a good egg, as in like he's not transphobic, he's not like an asshole, etc., etc., etc. Thank you very much, Forlorn. Oh god, there we go. This is the guy who debated Michael Knowles nothing? Yeah. It's the guy who debated Michael Knowles. And he's also debated a lot of other folks as well. He's supportive and compassionate. Yeah, he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. I see Dawkins. He talks to a lot of like religious folks. So like he did a talk with Jordan Peterson here. I would say one of the best episodes he did was with Esoterica. This was a great overview of like early Christianity, Judaism, etc. I thought it was great. He also did like a Sam Harris show. Again, a lot of pushback against like the worst ideas presented. I love Esoterica. Amazing channel. Just one trick Dinesh has yet to play. He destroyed Ben Shapiro as well. Yeah. Well, folks, if you've enjoyed the stream, hit the follow button on Twitch, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like the YouTube stream, and consider dropping those subs and donos. I am exhausted. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I've been running off of 3 hours of sleep. It's time for me to literally faceplant and hopefully be just like mentally silent. Be numbed to the world. Oh. And I'll be back soon. Maybe tomorrow night? I'm not sure. Not sure. It's so hot. It's so hot in this workshop, and I'm really looking forward to getting into a cooler area. Thanks for coming out, and I'm sorry I don't have more like to offer you guys in terms of like, hey, you should sub or dono, you we'll do something fun. I didn't get a chance to plan anything today, so I'm really sorry about that. And I will see all of you guys. Dude, I don't know that I'm gonna read into anybody today. Good night, you silly gooses, and have a good day tomorrow.